Here.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Here.
Councilmember Singleton,
Here.
and Councilmember Vance.
Here.
Councilmember Barringer will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Stand and join us. You may be seated.
Mr. Mayor, I have invited Pastor Elot Rodriguez to come and give the invitation this evening. Invocation, excuse me. Elot is the youth pastor at the Capitol
Very
Church.
good. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. It's my pleasure to lead the invocation for tonight's town council meeting, and I'd like to thank Mrs. Kathy Barringer for inviting me. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you for the commitment of these community leaders to care so deeply for the growth and development of the city of Garner, North Carolina. Your word says that if we need wisdom, to ask our generous God, and you will give it to us, and that you will not rebuke us for asking. And so as they gather here tonight, I ask that your presence be with them, and that you may grant them wisdom in order to make the best decisions for the benefit of our city. Lord, we also lift up our service members, both here and abroad. We pray that you would put a hedge of protection around them as they faithfully serve this great nation. We also pray for their families, that they may be surrounded by your peace as their husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters serve this country proudly. We thank you for their sacrifice and for our freedom. And lastly, I ask that you bless each and every one of us gathered here tonight. Give us the strength, wisdom, and will to continue to serve our city and our country. I pray that your protection be upon these leaders and their families, and that the decisions made in this meeting may bring honor and glory to you, Lord. It is in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is petitions and comments. That's time on the agenda for anyone to address the council on anything that is not on the agenda for tonight. If you wish to address the council, come to the podium, state your name and address, and you may address the council. Hearing none. Move to the adoption of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Close the discussion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Any presentations, Mr. Manager?
No, sir, not tonight.
Adoption of the agenda.
Already did it. You in the consent agenda.
Yeah, consent agenda.
Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Next, we'll move to public hearing. We have five public hearings tonight. We will begin with the first one is the annexation. David Bamford, staff person. Annexation 1905. Mr. Bamford.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. This is one of two annexations before you tonight, and both of them are related to water and sewer connections. The first one is annexation case 1905. And
David, let me open that. I'm sorry. Let me open the public hearing. All right, go ahead.
The property is located at 704 Maxwell Drive. The site's about 4.15 acres. The property does have a single-family dwelling unit, and the property owner did pay the water connection fees on May the 20th, and per the Garner Raleigh merger agreement, an annexation petition is required. And this is a vicinity map of the property. This is Maxwell Drive here, and Greenbrier Subdivision is located to the east. And the two parcels to the south were also annexed a couple years back when single-family homes were developed on those properties, and they made connections to water at that time. I'll be happy to answer any questions on this case.
Any questions for the council? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, call for a motion.
Mayor, I move we adopt ordinance 2019-3987 to extend the corporate limits of Garner.
I second that.
Motion second, further discussion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Also have the second annexation, Mr. Bamford, David, Blackwell property.
This annexation case is case 19-06. It's located at 2117 Clifford Road. This is directly across from the South Garner High School. The property is 2.1 acres in size. And the previous case, the property owner just wanted to connect the town water. This property owner wants to connect the town water and town sewer. And both of those utilities are available at that location. The property owner did pay the water and sewer connection fees on July the 10th. And per the Garner-Raleigh merger agreement, an annexation petition is required. And this is a vicinity map of the annexation site, and the high school is located southeast of this property, and the school is annexed into the corporate limits. And this is Clifford Road, Hebron Church Road, and Bryan Road to the west. And the property does contain one single-family dwelling unit. I'll be happy to answer any questions about this case.
I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone in the audience have anything they want to address the council? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Call for a motion.
I believe our motion would be done by ordinance number, is that right?
Yeah.
Mayor, I'll move that we approve ordinance number 2019-3988, which is an ordinance to extend the corporate limits of the town of Garner, North Carolina, and subject to the wording of the ordinance itself, which I won't read in detail unless I need.
Okay, there's a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Next is CUDZ 1903. Do you want to take these?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll open the hearing in CUDZ 1903 Kennedy Ridge Subdivision and CUPSB 1901. And I need, as town attorney, it's my duty to make some comments regarding the nature of these proceedings. And the comments that I'm going to make will apply in part not only to this case, but to SP 1805 Holiday Inn and CUP SP 1903 Tar Heel Paper. Basically, what these three cases have in common is that there is an element of a permit approval to be considered by the town. In one case, it's called a CUP. In one case, it's called a SUP, conditional use permit and special use permit, or what those terms apply to. Basically, in the Holiday Inn case and in the Tar Heel Paper case, that's the only matter before the council tonight. In the Kennedy Ridge subdivision case, there is also a procedure known as conditional use district zoning, which is a hearing that will be held in that matter to be followed in part of the same hearing by the conditional use permit proceeding. Under the law of North Carolina, zoning is a matter that the council hears as a legislative function. Members of the public are entitled to be heard, offer their opinions on the zoning case. When the zoning case is called in the Kennedy Ridge subdivision case, we will announce the appropriate time for members of the public who have an interest in that matter to come forward and testify, just as the applicant and the staff will come forward and testify. In the Kennedy Ridge subdivision matter, in addition to the zoning case, as I say, there is a conditional use permit case, and the conditional use permit case and the SUP case and the other two involve several characteristics that are set forward in state law. First, in those cases, the SUP and the CUP, those matters involve technical testimony, matters that are testified to by persons who are considered experts in the field, land use, engineering, landscape design, whatever the witnesses happen to be in this case. There are also, also the law says that in the technical part of the proceedings in those three cases, the members of the public cannot give admissible testimony on things that do require expert opinion knowledge, such as the engineering, traffic, land values, that sort of thing. When we get into this, we'll sort of help walk you through when the appropriate time for you to testify is. The other two things that are particularly important in these cases is that the law requires that the testimony given by the persons who will provide information to us in the conditional use permit and the special use permit case is to be sworn testimony. That is testimony given on oath or affirmation. And so at the appropriate time, we will ask persons who wish to testify in that capacity in those three matters to come forward and be sworn by the clerk. The other thing that the law requires that we do is in each of these cases, we have to inquire of the members of the council whether they have received any what are called ex parte communications, that is communications, emails, telephone calls, face-to-face conversation, whatever, by persons who represent the applicant or opposed to the application in these cases. And basically, if the members of the council have received any ex parte communications, they need to disclose them for the record. So I will ask council at this time, has any member of the council participated in any ex parte communications that you need to disclose for the record?
Anything?
No.
There being none, the next question that the law requires that we ask council members is whether any person on the council who will hear the evidence and vote on these matters have any pre-existing biases or opinions which could not be swayed by the testimony given at this hearing. And if they do, they should recuse themselves. I'll ask, does anyone have any such preconceived biases or prejudices in these cases?
No.
There being none of those, we're ready to proceed then. And what I'll do is I'll ask those persons who are expert witnesses who propose to give testimony in the permit stage of these three cases to come forward and let the clerk administer the oath.
Bill, you will handle each one of them separately, right?
Right. It's my purpose, ladies and gentlemen, and Ms. Clerk, that these comments are a part of each of the proceedings here, but obviously we're going to try each case separately.
Very good.
Raise your right hand, please.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I believe we're in a position now where we're ready to call for hearing the evidence in CUDZ 1903 Kennedy Ridge Subdivision. And I have Mr. Bamford in here. And what we'll do is we'll hear testimony from the staff, which will present the nature of the case, lay out it with some pictures, diagrams, that sort of thing, set the scene. Then we'll call upon the applicant and ask if the applicant wishes to give any testimony on the zoning aspect of this case. And then following that, we will call upon the any member of the public who wishes to be heard or ask a question or whatever you need to do to participate in the case to your satisfaction. We'll work with you on that. All right, Mr. Bamford.
I will open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. This is a conditional use zoning and site plan request. The project name is Kennedy Ridge. The site is located at 605 Creech Road. It's located directly north and east of the Chappelle's Funeral Home on Creech Road. The site is 16.2 acres in size. The Planning Commission did review this case at their meeting on July the 15th and did recommend approval. This site, or this map, shows the project boundary outlined in orange. Creech Road runs along the eastern portion of the property. It does have frontage on Creech Road. There is a school and a church located south of the site. North Garner Middle School is located to the west along Curtis Drive and Powell Drive. Chappelle's Funeral Home is located in this quadrant here. This is a Google Street View of the rezoning site looking north on Creech Road, and it's the area over here on the left side of the road. A portion of the site is cleared, but the majority of the site is wooded with trees. This map shows the zoning in this area of Garner. The property is zoned R40, which is low density single family. Directly to the north is R9 zoning. And this site here is the Ashton Forest subdivision, which was approved recently. That project has not started construction yet. To the south and also to the west is R12 zoning. That's a single-family zoning district. Avery Park subdivision is located in this area. The predominant zoning on the east side of Creech Road is residential 40. There is public water that runs along Creech Road, but public sewer is not available on the west side. I'm sorry, on the east side of Creech Road. This shows the rezoning cases in this area of Garner. The most recent case was 2004. This was the property directly north of this rezoning site. And the oldest case that we could find on file was from 1991. And that was when Avery Park was rezoned from R40 to R9 Conditional District 35. The existing zoning is R40. This is a single-family zoning district that allows single-family uses on minimum 40,000 square foot lots or 1.08 units per acre. The requested zoning classification is multifamily 1 conditional use. And the proposed use for the site is townhomes, 64 units. And this would be at a density of 5.5 units per acre. This list shows all the permissible uses in the MF1 general use district, from duplexes, townhomes, apartments, to community centers, cemeteries, churches, bed and breakfast. The applicant has put use restrictions on the property as part of this rezoning case. The only two permissible uses, or the only permissible use, would be townhomes for this site. All other uses that are permissible in MF1 general use would not be permissible on the site. Some additional conditions proposed by the applicant. There are conditions that have to do with the aesthetics. There's conditions that have to do with a minimum square footage for a covered porch. Each dwelling unit will have at least a 1-car garage, and the minimum heated square footage for each townhome unit would be 1,450. Additional conditions have to do with the siding. If vinyl siding is used, the minimum gauge would be 0.045. And the last condition has to do with masonry treatment on a group of townhouse units. The Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan in this area is medium density residential. which has a recommended density range of 2.5 to 5 units an acre. Suggested uses would be single-family, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and townhome-style developments. Apartments would not fit within the recommendations of the Garner Forward Plan for medium density. The proposed density is over that 5 unit an acre threshold. The proposed density is around 5.5 units an acre. So a comp plan amendment from medium density to high density residential would be needed. The only difference between medium density and high density is the recommended density range. Under high density, it's over 5 units an acre. Apartments would not be a recommended use in the high density category. It would still be single family, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and townhomes. So the list of suggested uses would not change going from medium density to high density, just the density limit. Medium density 2.5 to 5, high density over 5 units an acre. There are several principles of the Garner Forward Plan. We feel some principles that would be compatible with this proposal: attract young and old populations. We are seeing a trend towards smaller lots, and we're seeing older people and millennials that seem to be attracted to smaller lots. Anticipating the redevelopment surge is also a guiding principle. Preserve and protect Garner's existing housing stock. The proposal does have buffering from adjoining residential uses. And also the last guiding principle would be affordable housing. This proposal shows 64 townhome units. This request from R40 to multifamily 1, conditional use district 216, is consistent with the Garner Forward Plan's guiding principles and recommendations. Townhomes are a compatible use in the medium density residential designation. Although this request is technically inconsistent with the recommended density, staff believes the difference to be negligible, and the request is reasonable and in keeping with the spirit and intent of the Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan. And lastly, a plan amendment would be needed to reclassify the site from medium density to high density residential to allow a townhome development at over that 5 unit an acre threshold. I'll be happy to answer any zoning questions, and the presentation on the details of the site plan will be next.
David, could you, just for the record, point out the current zoning and what is allowed there? I think there's a chart in there. I need to find where that is. I know it's fairly expansive in terms of the current zoning, in terms of what items are allowed. Is that correct?
Are you asking the difference between what's permissible and what would be proposed? Under R40 zoning, single family would be a permissible use, double wide mobile homes, solar farms, telecommunications, towers, churches, and some other uses. The proposed use for the entire site would be restricted to townhome developments only. All other permissible uses that's on this slide here that would be allowed in MF1 general use would be prohibited. Not sure if that answers your question.
And I think I saw manufactured Class A homes are also permitted.
Those are permissible in R40.
And the other one. And the other question, I think it's probably pretty obvious by the rendition there, but there's not a road connection or connection from the neighborhood to the east there to this property at this time. Is that right? And
There is not one now, and there's not one proposed on the site
Okay.
plan.
that was going to be my next question. There's not one proposed. That's all I have for right now.
Okay.
Okay, other members of the council? How about those in the audience? Anyone wish to speak on any matter? Okay, I'm going to close this public hearing. You too, David? Yeah.
Here now is the opportunity for the applicant to come forward if anyone wants to be heard on zoning. And then we'll see if the public wants to be heard on zoning, then we'll get your comments on the permit. Thank you, sir. State your name and address and so forth.
Hello, Jay Colvin, 4009 Periwinkle Blue Lane. I'm with the applicant, I'm with the developer. And I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you all for letting us present this to you. I also wanted to say thank you to the staff. They've been extremely helpful, answered all of our questions, been very communicative, helping us figure out the ins and outs of the code and what would work here. Our plan is, like David stated, to build townhomes in the area. We are a builder that builds throughout the Triangle area. We've had a lot of success with townhomes. It's a product that the demographic shifts in the region and the country as a whole. More folks are leaning towards that product. It provides a little less upkeep, a little more time left in their lives to go do the things they want instead of taking care of yards and doing a lot of getting up on the roof and cleaning out gutters, things like that. This would be our first neighborhood that we would build in Garner. We've built in the area, but we are excited about building in the town of Garner. We've been pursuing a few other deals as well, so hopefully this is the first of many in the future. Talking to the product a little bit more, we think that homes are going to be priced in the 220 to 240 range. The homes that we're intending to build start out at a floor plan of 1,573 square feet. They're a one-car garage home. We've built several hundred of them throughout the Triangle region over the last several years, and it's a home that people resonate with, they like it a lot. So anyways, just wanted to say thank you all for letting us present it. Happy to answer any questions if y'all have any for me.
I believe I
Yes.
saw, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Bud.
Ken.
I was just going to ask, I believe I saw at the community meeting or public meeting you had, there was some question about, I guess, either traditionally or otherwise, most of these would be owner occupied, I guess. There may be some rentals, but it's anticipated that these will be townhomes that an owner will purchase. And
Correct. Yes, sir. We build fee simple homes for sale. So we are not a rental community. We are not a landlord. We build these homes for people to own and be owner occupied.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr.
You
Kelly.
have restrictive covenants that govern rental or prohibit or allow it?
We
Or-
typically allow it if a homeowner wants to rent it out. Internally, when we sell the homes initially, we restrict the amount of investors that are going to buy in the neighborhood. Sometimes people buy as an investment and just hold it and not necessarily rent it out, but we typically internally restrict investors. Honestly, if it's an investor that's buying it, maybe we're leaving money on the table, to be perfectly honest. So we internally restrict investors, but we would not have a covenant that would restrict the end owner from turning it into a rental in the future or subsequent owners eventually turning it into a rental.
You have will there be an HOA, and will the HOA take care of outside maintenance, or is that free?
Yes, sir.
That goes back to the individual owner?
No, HOA maintains the yard. They do things like power washing, siding, maintaining the yards, maintaining landscaping. The individual roofs are homeowner maintained, and it's their responsibility to take care of roof, and under their homeowner's insurance, that'll take care of that. But retaining walls, common area, BMP, open space, all of that would be entrance monument, all the landscaping would be HOA maintained. And then individual yards on the homes would be maintained by the HOA as well.
Curiosity compels me to ask, how long will you as the developer stay with the HOA, and then when will it be turned over to the homeowners?
We typically do the handoff at the final home closing to the HOA, but we would start having that handoff probably about 80% occupancy is when we would start having them elect their own board members and do the handoff.
Thank you.
Does any member of the public wish to be heard in connection with this matter? Thank you, ma'am. Just state your name and address, please. Thank you.
Beth Blackman, 113 Logger Lane, Garner. I'm the engineer with Timmons Group, if you have any questions about the technical side of things. Okay, thank you.
Let me ask again if there's any public folks as opposed to engineers or whatever who wish to be heard.
I'm not an expert on this.
Sure.
I'm just a person, not an expert.
This is your time.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Garner's
Good
Town
evening.
Council. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm grateful for this opportunity to be in front of you this evening, even if it is very foreign to me. And
Let me
well
start you
outside-
outright. State your name and address if you would, please.
Oh, sure.
Thank you,
My
sir.
name is Tim Holton, and I'm on 411 Longview Street
Thank you, sir.
in Garner. So, like I said, very, very foreign to me, very outside my comfort zone, but I'm here not as a know-it-all. I am here to humbly express my feeling about Garner and this proposal, so please bear with me. I want to begin by saying that a year ago, my wife and I fell in love. It was pretty much love at first sight. We fell in love with Garner, North Carolina. A little over a year before that, we loaded up the truck in St. Paul, Minnesota, and moved to Raleigh with little idea of what the future would hold. But we had some strange sense from a previous visit in 2014 that this was the move we should make. After a few months, we got settled. My wife landed a wonderful position at NC State, and I was brought on to Harris Teeter. We were finding our way, slowly but surely. But after about 16 months, it was time for us to sink some roots into this place. When we began our search for a permanent home in January of last year, we knew next to nothing about Garner. On sort of a whim, we decided one weekend to check this Garner place out. We were immediately attracted to the country-like charm and the diversity. We love the area's dense forest with its variety of iconic North Carolina pines that appear to race to the sky, along with the rugged oaks, dogwoods, crepe myrtles, and so much more. And then there was a stunning, incredible, though very small downtown, with a little water tower that is, to my mind, a work of art, a priceless sculpture, a masterpiece, really. It just grabbed me by the chest. Garner, North Carolina touched a place in my heart that would not let go, probably triggered from periods of small-town living as a boy. Yet, here it is, 5 to 6 miles from North Carolina state capital, a major and important city. Can you even believe a place like this exists? A week or so later, we grabbed a bite at one of the popular local joints. We enjoyed the food and the kindness of our waitress. We told her we were looking for a home and thinking about finding our permanent place here in Garner. Her words ran quietly and smoothly off her lips. In Garner, we love our peoples. Well, that sealed the deal. Garner would become our permanent home. Within a couple of weeks, we found a classic, sturdy, southern brick ranch home in the School Acres neighborhood. Now, before I continue, I want to tell you a little bit about who I am and where I've been. I've already said my name is Tim Holton. I was born in 1963, 20-some miles north of Garner, and about 1,200 miles west, in a place called Stillwater, Oklahoma. And I was raised on the frozen tundra of Wisconsin, graduating from a little place called Heartland. You can call me a cheesehead. That's fine. From there, I went on to college and career, moving to the windy city of Chicago and taking assignments while working at UPS in places like New York and Baltimore, with a whole lot of travel that took me from Anchorage, Alaska to San Diego to Boston and places in between. I later moved to Atlanta to work in the corporate office, and later I spent 10 years in the mountains of Colorado in an exquisite place called Breckenridge. I worked in San Francisco, spent a dozen years in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, all of this before we loaded up that truck and moved to Raleigh, all before finding our permanent home here in Garner. I've seen a lot of this country in 56 years, and I look forward to living peacefully here in Garner until I rest in peace. Now, we've been in our home for a bit over a year. Let me just say that we had no idea that when the waitress said, "In Garner, we love our peoples," it would be an understatement. The loving kindness and warmth of our neighbors have been beyond anything we would have anticipated. And the diversity in this neighborhood is astonishing. Black, white, Native Indian, young, old, middle-aged, singles, families, artists, retired firemen and veterans, architects, craftsmen, etc. We have Philadelphia Eagle fans, Carolina Panther fans, and yes, a Green Bay Packer fan. We have many neighbors who have lived in this community for decades. I'm talking 30, 40, 50 years and more. We have cases of 90-year-old parents living next to their 70-year-old children. Now, I'll call her Miss M. She's 94 years old and lives around the block on Avery Street. She regularly sees us walking our dog, and one day earlier this summer, she invited me over for some homemade ice cream and a chance to meet even more neighbors on her street, as well as her son who lives nearby. She is amazing, sharp, a witty woman, and her ice cream, it was peach, and it was a touch of heaven. Speaking of heaven, our neighbors, the couple right next door, and they're back here, are angels in the flesh. Although one of them might have been hell on wheels in his younger days based on the stories he tells. The sights and sounds of this neighborhood and of Garner are to behold. I experienced them from my favorite room in the house, the front porch. From there, the songbirds and roosters that greet us in the morning, to the magnificent sound of the train whistles, to the beautiful butterflies and hummingbirds and birds of prey, to the deer and other wildlife sightings we see on the property we're discussing today, to the sounds of the crickets, toads, and frogs that lull us to sleep at night. We fell in love with Garner, and we continue to love Garner. Garner, North Carolina is a very, very precious place on the map, on the globe for that matter. And it ought to be treated and valued with the utmost care and respect. If ever people didn't see this before, they needed to have the scales fall from their eyes, or at least get a new prescription for their glasses. Now, it hasn't all been peaches and cream. In the year plus that we've lived here, we've seen some things that have been troubling. I'm not interested in addressing those things tonight. You can ask me later about them if you like, but even those issues brought out some incredible care and concern from our neighbors. So today we're talking about a proposal for a project on a piece of Garner, North Carolina land that is practically in the shadow of that masterpiece, the downtown Garner Water Tower. Walking through this property or looking at it from my porch, I figured that someday people would live on this beautiful piece of land. But who would have imagined this beautiful wooded land designated for homes with room to breathe between their neighbors would be developed in a way that takes a razor to most of it in order to stack 64 units side by side by side. A pretty significant number of fellow neighbors attended the Dan Ryan Builders Community Meeting at the First Baptist Church of Garner. I think most of the folks, like me, were new to this sort of process, but they were concerned citizens. So they came out. In conversations with neighbors since that meeting, I've been told that when a builder's project gets to this stage, it's pretty much rubber stamped by the council. I don't know. I've not lived here long enough to know if that impression is true. I guess I'll get a better sense of that sentiment after tonight. After the community meeting, there were plenty of concerns, or at the community meeting, there were plenty of concerns about the quality of construction, the density and its striking difference with the surrounding character and landscape, as well as the stress added to the already ballooning traffic congestion. During that community meeting, Dan Ryan representative, he spoke tonight, suggested taking a visit to their Cleveland Springs project near Garner to get a good idea of what to expect of this proposed Kennedy Ridge project. So last month I decided to take a look at their Cleveland Springs project. I don't know if any of you have been there in the last month, but it was shocking. The materials used to build this project were obliterated by Mother Nature. The hail literally tore the place up. I don't know a whole lot about the ins and outs of building materials, but I do know that brick and cement don't disintegrate like that. Now, just last weekend, my wife and I happened to be in the area of Colonial Baptist Church at the corner of Tryon and Holly Springs Road in Cary. My wife noticed a Dan Ryan builder sign on the side of the road for a townhome project called Piper's Crossing that has begun adjacent to Colonial Baptist. So we thought, what the heck? Let's go see what Dan Ryan is building over there. The first thing we noticed, 2-car garages, and more architectural detail in stone and brick texture, and what looked like a different kind of siding. Taking a closer look, I discovered the owners of these properties would be getting fiber cement board siding to protect their homes. We noticed the picnic gazebos within the project, really nice. We went across Holly Springs Road to their Piper's Grove townhome project. Same thing. 2-car garages, fiber cement board siding, and even more brick. I thought to myself, what's going on here? Do new home buyers in Cary deserve more sturdy building materials than the people of Garner? Is the weather more harsh in Cary than it is in Garner, North Carolina? Do the people of Garner have less cars in 2019 than the people of Cary? I mean, seriously, what is going on here? Garner has this gorgeous property on Creech Road zoned R40, or room to breathe living, as I call it. Seems appropriate. And there's a proposal on the table for something dramatically different than that. I wonder, are the people of Garner being shown a certain level of contempt, disregard, or disrespect? Are somehow we, the people of Garner, not worthy to have the same level of quality, both in terms of materials and design? Is a 2-car garage too much for future Garner residents to expect in a new home in 2019 and beyond? If a proposal comes to us that asks us to change the density by many times its current status, then shouldn't we expect much, much more from the project in terms of all-around quality? Not significantly less than what the builder, Dan Ryan, is actually capable of doing? Are the people and the future people that surround School Acres lesser people somehow? No. We are worthy of homes built to last just as much as the people of Cary. Now, I had never heard of Dan Ryan Builders before, so I decided to do what everyone does, Google it. Well, I did, and I came across a listing of reviews for Dan Ryan Builders on a site called consumeraffairs.com. And to my surprise, right at the top was a July 18th review from a woman named Erica from, guess what? Garner, North Carolina. It's not pretty. There are 1 or 2 positive comments on the site. I will say that. I could read them from my phone, but like I said, overall, it's not pretty, and I'm not looking to embarrass Dan Ryan Builders. Mayor Williams, town council members, I love our peoples. And we, the people of Garner, are worthy of better. Much, much better. The time must end where our community accepts the lower standards while neighboring towns and communities receive better. Garner has a slogan, a great place to be. We live on a street called Longview. In the long view, we all desire to move Garner to become an even greater place to be. The town of Garner is a gem, period. It is precious, and it is worthy to be treated with the utmost care and respect. And I know we can do much better for our community and for the people of Garner than what's currently being proposed. Thank you again.
Thank you. We may ask you to come back next week.
All right, now's the time for the applicant to have any other witnesses that wish to have in connection with the permit. Or is any member of the public still wants to be heard? Yeah.
David Watson, 102 Arlene Street, across street Creech from the development that's proposed. Tim put it very well. Garner is a great place to be. Us that's been here, we know it. It doesn't take long. I'm opposed to this rezoning. I'm not opposed to developing the property, but I'm opposed to developing the property at this density. You see all the R40, you see R9 next to it. Then we got the O&I for the funeral home. The MF1 would be very inconsistent with surrounding. I know traffic is always an issue with a development, but there's guides for that. I would be more in favor of an R9, not an MF1, just for consistency. Also, you heard Mr. Banford say that the plan, as it is 5.5 units per acre. The rules y'all have set is 5 units per acre. So it is not consistent with the plan that Garner has. I've lived on Creech Road for all but 2 years of my life. I'm 51 years old, and we enjoy our space, R40. Like I said, I'll go along with an R9, but I have to oppose and ask you to do the same. I believe it's option 2 on y'all's plan to decline the MF1. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Ezekiel Wilson. I live on Creech Road, 808 Creech Road. I've been living there for about 20 years, and I live in that R40 zoning, and I live about 800 yards from this proposed site. And, you know, if you ran track, you know, that's pretty much like 2 times around a track. So I live that close that I can actually see, you know, the site, the land. So, you know, just voicing my concerns about the traffic that's already pre-exist. It's a shortcut from Garner to Raleigh. You have high school kids that drive to get to Southeast High School. You got traffic on Creech Road that goes to the concerts. It's already heavily traveled. And looking at that site, it's only, you know, one exit in and out, and that's on Creech Road. So, you know, I'm definitely concerned about the heavy traffic that will be, you know, existing. And then also the R40, that country living site across the street from this development, you know, really concerned. Also, water is already on Creech Road, so I just wanted to know the sewage. The gentleman mentioned about 2 annexes just earlier in the opening. You know, what about the possibility of those that live in an R40 to be able to annex into the sewage? We already have water. So you're kind of like opening up a can of worms, you know, figure of speech, you know, concerning. So I just, you know, just wanted to voice, my opinion that, again, the heavy traffic. And then what about the possibility of those that do live in an R40 to be able to tap into the sewage? Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public or from the applicant? Thank you.
My name is Kay Woodall at 504 Longview Street in Garner. Our property backs up to this site. I take my grandkids and we walk on the sewer line, which is to the back of this property. There is a sewer line and there's 2 creeks on this property. My concern is with the creeks on this property. What are they going to do about the creeks on this property? Because I do take my kids, my grandkids, and we go down into the creek and we walk those creeks as a nature path. What are they going to do about these creeks in this property? The property that they're proposed to deal with is very hilly because we do walk up those paths. So my concern is what are they going to do about that? What are they going to do about repurposing or redirecting those creeks and the sewer easement line that is back behind our house? I want to, how close will that property come to that? Because I can stand on my deck and see that piece of property. I saw them when they surveyed it. So that's my concern.
Maybe we could answer that.
Can anybody answer that?
We're doing the site.
Yeah, somebody from the applicant wish to come talk about the creek and the sewer easement.
They would.
Have they seen the creeks?
Is that more in the site plan version than the zoning
It's
version?
on the site.
David, can you put up on the screen?
Some of this information will be discussed in the site plan portion of this case, which we have not gotten to yet. I'll fast forward. So just to answer that question about the creek, those creeks have what's called riparian buffers. And what that means is there's a 50-foot no-build buffer on each side of the center line of those streams. And this project does take that into account and stay out of those buffers. So the buffers are outlined here. It's like a upside down U or Y going through the site. So the creek buffers will not be disturbed.
Sewer line's not being rerouted, is it?
No, sir. This map shows the sewer. And there was a question about serving properties with sewer along Creech Road. Depending on where the properties are, some of those sites might not have direct access to public sewer at this time. The existing sewer lines are the lines shown on green on this map. So the sewer is on the west side of Creech Road and then cuts across to the east side where the school is currently.
Maybe could you put that other depiction up there? So do I understand what for me would be on the east end of this property, that area there does not lend itself well to any building? Would that be, I'm not sure what the footage is from the units back to the property line there, but that would stay in that state without any further building in that area, is that correct?
I'm somewhat hesitant to get too much into the site plan, so I kind of want to
Okay.
defer to
You're right.
the attorney because we're starting to talk about a lot of
Okay.
specifics
You're
that
right.
should be in the quasi-judicial
Let's let
portion.
David go ahead and do the conversation about it, and we can jump right into it. Whoever's going to do it. You doing it? Okay.
David, you've got the site plan, right?
Jeff's getting ready to
Jeff's going to
present.
do
I'm
it.
just going to get it
Yes,
at the
can do
point
that.
where he picks up.
You need to announce or anything?
Yeah, let me, before we jump into this next proceeding, is everybody from the public who wishes to be heard on the zoning been heard? One more. Okay, thank you.
Good evening to the mayor and the council. My name is Bishop Luther Brooks. I'm the senior pastor of Solid Rock Full Gospel Baptist Church, 401 Creech Road. And I would like to know, if you could, at this subdivision, show us the plan that you have for traffic reconstruction is a big concern of ours, because there is some congestion from the elementary school directly across the street, also from our church, and now from this new proposed site. Are there going to be turning lanes? I just would like to know, what is the plan going to be to handle the traffic that's going to come from this subdivision, if at all possible?
He will talk about that on the site plan.
Thank you, sir.
It stays right here.
Make sure, is anybody else from the public wish to be heard at this point? All right, thank you, sir.
And I think I've done my best to keep track of the questions that have been asked so far, but if I forget anything, don't hesitate to let me know. Jeff Triesenberg, Planning Director for the town of Garner. And while I'm thinking about it, before we get down the road, Allison and Lauren will be here presenting to you tonight. I know you've all met Allison at least once or twice before. This will be Lauren's first time giving a presentation before the council, and I'll let her introduce herself. But just wanted to preface that for down the road. This is a subdivision proposal. They're currently looking at developing 11.5 acres of the 16.5 acre site. At this point, the balance of the property would be left as future development. So it could be developed as something else in the future. It's not slated at this point in time as preserved open space. But we have talked with the applicant about some things that they may or may not be able to do to address the density issue. In other words, preserving some more space as open space to bring the overall density down. And then I will also address some of the future transportation plans for this area, because we've been looking at a lot of different projects right in this pocket. And so we have a much better idea, I think, of how the future roads will lay out and how some of these properties will be served. But the proposed use here for this 11.5 acres is 64 townhomes. All residential subdivisions in Garner are required to set aside 12% of their property for tree cover. This is mature tree cover. This requirement is being met with existing plant material. A lot of that comes from the Neuse River buffers that David mentioned a little bit ago, that 50 feet that's required on each side of the stream to be preserved. So this plan currently shows 13.07% of the land being set aside for tree cover. There are also perimeter buffers to buffer against neighboring uses. To the north, townhomes against the approved Ashton Forest single-family subdivision, there's a 35-foot buffer. On the south side, you have vacant residential property as well as the funeral home. And so depending on which one of those, it's either 25 or 15 feet. And then on the west side is currently 15 feet. There is a street buffer requirement along Creech Road, which is 20 feet wide. That will have the street trees as well as some enhanced landscaping. The street trees are provided at every 40 feet according to the plans along all public streets as required, Creech Road included. In addition to tree canopy, there is also a required percentage of open space Again, depending on what type of space it is, it can count as both. They are required to have 10% open space, and they have provided 10.36%. Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources Department did look at this and recommended a fee in lieu for the parkland dedication as opposed to having this developer formally dedicate any land on site to the town. The Inspections Department, together with the Fire Department, has reviewed the proposal and approved that the plans meet their ordinance requirements. The site does not contain any FEMA-designated floodplain or flood zone. You can see here the northern boundary of the site. The mapped floodplains do not begin up until you get closer to Creek Commons Way. So this portion of the creek does not have a mapped floodplain. However, there are the two blue line streams that traverse the property, and those are both subject to those Neuse River buffer rules, which require the 50 feet undisturbed on either side. In terms of stormwater management, the site is subject to stormwater quality regulations for nitrogen, as well as the stormwater quantity regulations for the 1, 10, and 25-year storms. They have included a wet retention pond that will treat a portion of the nitrogen. However, they still will need to make a nitrogen offset payment to a wetland mitigation bank. The site will be served by City of Raleigh water and sewer infrastructure. Again, there is a 12-inch water line currently on Creech Road that the development would tap into, the same as the neighboring Ashton Forest subdivision. And there is an 8-inch sewer line running here through the back of the property along the westernmost creek. So again, that will be where the development would tap into for sewer service. And then they will also have to extend through the site back up towards Creech Road. The site does have 350 feet approximately of frontage on Creech. Currently, it's a 22-foot wide paved ribbon pavement surface in an existing 60-foot right-of-way. The transportation plan calls for this eventually to be what we call a 3-lane facility. So still just 1 lane in each direction with center turn lane or median. That takes the capacity of the roadway from about 10 to 12,000 cars per day up to closer 18,000 cars per day. This development at this time would only have that 1 point of access on Creech. However, there is a stub out from Ashton Forest about right here, and they have their own access out to Creech, so there will be 2 points into and out of the site. In looking at the traffic count histories, again, this is when DOT goes out every 2 years and they put those little counters across the road and they flip through when your wheels travel over them. Being, I think, that the schools have been in place for quite some time, I don't think that there's been a whole lot of variation in the traffic, and the numbers would bear that out. You're looking at about half of what a typical 2-lane road could accommodate. Once you start adding those turn lanes and center turn lanes, then we're looking at about maybe 1/3 to 1/4 capacity today. Of course, Ashton Forest would be adding some traffic as well, but again, you're looking at a fairly small percentage of increase in those numbers because they seem to be hovering right around 5,000 vehicles per day. And again, here is the site plan as shown. We have the stormwater device tucked in here behind these homes. Again, we'll be carrying the street south. And here I just want to talk real briefly about some of the connectivity in the area. Curtis Drive comes in just off of the site, so any development on this property could not connect Curtis Drive without development of the parcel to the north, which backs up to the Ashton Forest site here. There would be a creek crossing there involved, which is questionable. And then again, you'd have another creek crossing here, which would be questionable. I think the prevailing opinion is that this pocket of land here would only be served by Curtis Drive without getting some kind of other crossing in place. That is its only option. There could be a crossing here, and we have asked the developer to set that aside to facilitate development of this pocket on the southwestern corner. However, if you look at this property to the south, which is zoned R9, there does appear to be some farm trails, what I would call farm tracks, that connect to an unnamed roadway. Actually may have a name, but it's not showing up in IMAPs. I'd have to look at the plat. But that's the likely point of where we would get some east-west connectivity. Again, it would not be directly through to Creech Road. It would come in and connect internally eventually to some of the development here. But that seems to be the best opportunity to ever have any crossing of this particular creek where the sewer line runs. We do have a mail kiosk and guest parking located here on the corner that they had proposed, sidewalks on both sides of the street, and carrying out to Creech. In terms of the mail kiosk parking and for townhomes generally to accommodate visitors, they are required to have 16 spaces, and they have provided those 16 with one handicapped accessible. The lighting for the parking lot does meet the requirements of the UDO as well as staff recommendations for LED lighting. The street lighting itself will be reviewed during construction drawings submittal if this project moves forward. And in terms of looking at the site plan's conformity with the town's adopted plans and policies, the 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan identifies Creech Road as a 2-lane divided facility with proposed improvements along the frontage of Creech Road, which will have turn lanes into and out or into the development. This project, as proposed, may be found in conformity with the 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan. Again, there were no recommendations from the Parks and Rec plan for this particular site. So therefore, as proposed with the fee in lieu of parkland dedication, it may be considered in conformity with the Parks and Rec plan. And after sufficient review and plan revisions, staff finds that this project, as now proposed, does conform to the regulations in the UDO, so long as the project-specific conditions are met. There is one additional that did not make it into the actual staff report. That is number 1 listed on this slide, that prior to issuance of a first building permit, the stormwater administrator would be in proof of payment for the required nitrogen offset payment. And then number 2, prior to recording the first final plat, the planning department will need to be in receipt of the voluntary annexation petition. Also, prior to recording the first plat, they will need to submit their HOA documents and restrictive covenants for review. The developer shall be responsible for those roadway improvements along Creech and anything else that DOT might identify in the intervening time. Prior to the building permit, that fee in lieu of parkland dedication needs to be paid. Town of Garner engineering inspection fees paid prior to picking up the final plans. And finally, Corpud, which is City of Raleigh Public Utilities Department, their fees for water and sewer shall be paid at the time of requesting the building permit. Again, the Planning Commission reviewed this request at their July 15th meeting. With a unanimous vote, the Planning Commission did confirm staff's findings in Section 7 of the report that the project is in conformity with adopted town plans and policies, and further accepted staff's statements regarding the zoning consistency, which David went over. We do have the motions sheets on page 77 and 79 with our recommendations highlighted. And then just a note that it is 7 conditions instead of 6 for the site subdivision plan. I will go back to the plan and take any questions that you may have at this time.
Yeah. Question. Stated that they really can't cross that riparian buffer, it'd be too costly. So the only way to access this is if Ashton Forest does not go all the way to Curtis Drive, there's no connectivity there. So there's a separate lot back there. So the only way to access this property is if Curtis Drive was extended to access that lot and the lot beside it, nothing else. That's all I can really is those two pieces of property, two lots, two small lots.
At this point in time, unless someone were to carry this street across and then recross, but I have a feeling that that many crossings would probably not be
Cost
permitted.
prohibitive.
Yeah,
Because
and
you're
cost
crossing, not one, but the riparian buffer, not once, but twice.
Right.
Okay, so again, the only access, which there is no access now, whether it's access, but from this project, which would be very expensive, is if somebody did something with that property on Curtis Drive and if they could work out an agreement to access over here. Just curious, because it says on the site plan, reserved by owner, possibility of something in the future. Okay.
Right.
Thanks for now.
The number of lots and the density calculation, is that based on the total area of the tract, or just the developed area of the tract?
Just the developed area.
So if you were to take, refresh my memory, what was the total area of the piece of property?
It's, I think, right at 16 and a half. And so the current developed area is 11 and a half. If they were to carve off another acre and a half, that would drop the density to a point below 5 dwelling units per acre.
And safe to say that from the back of the back property line, or the property line on the back side of the east side of residence on Longview, there's no guarantee that area will not be disturbed, because somebody could come in off of Penny Street and get access to it. By some stretch, they could do likewise off of Curtis. But as of right now,
Are no plans?
obviously, there's nothing planned there. And is it safe to say that the distance from the western property line to the first part of the area that's developed is that's something on the order of 700 feet? From the western boundary up to the dead end on the main street going through there?
So this distance right here would be
No.
100. Well, I'm just for scale.
Oh, okay.
This would be about 100. So this is probably closer to maybe between 300 and 400 feet from here to here. Probably about 400 to 500 feet to the end of the road.
Okay. I was just looking at the length of one of the lots and trying to guesstimate it. How much? Kind of hard to, you all have to sort this out to what I can talk about and can't talk about. How much discussion was there on the materials used in construction? That is the outside siding, particularly the vinyl. We've had this discussion. You can probably recount it a lot more times than I can, but that's been a point of debate. We've tried to legislate quality of housing and ultimately legislate the price. We fail miserably in that. But has there been any discussion about, as a minimum standard, having hardy plank?
So our discussions within the planning department always start with the old policy, the water allocation policy, which referenced the .045 vinyl as being the base of what the town will consider. So beyond that, we tend to focus most of our discussions on the overall appearance. We certainly mention the possibility, but that's something that you could ask the developer if that's something that they're willing to consider.
Which portion do we ask that? I don't think that would come under the zoning. That would come under the site plan, would it not?
That would be a zoning condition. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Triesenberg, how much of a buffer is there? I heard you mention 300 feet from the backside of the development to the existing development. That distance, will it remain wooded? Will it be cleared?
So the only part that I can say for sure will remain wooded is the 100 feet along the streams. In addition to that, whenever these two pockets are developed, there would be that additional requirements, for the 12% tree cover and the 10% open space. But my guess is that what is currently along the buffer is going to be more than adequate to meet those additional requirements. So, at this point, I do not know that the developer does not have any intention to disturb these two areas, just what's within the site project boundary. So whatever's there would stay at this time, but moving into the future, the only thing that I can say for sure would remain wooded would be what is along the stream buffers.
And the traffic analysis for the amount of traffic coming in and out, and I saw the charts from the various years. How much of an increase will it be, or if approved?
Wrong way. There we go. So at 64 units, each unit, I think, and the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a townhome unit is usually expected to generate between somewhere around 7 to 9 trips per day. It's not as much as a single-family detached home. It is somewhat lower. So you're looking at maybe around 420, 450 trips per day. If I'm doing my math right. No, I'm not. 575, thank you.
How many?
575.
Extra trips on the traffic counts. And with that, did DOT make any other requirements for turning lanes or anything of that nature?
Yes, so there is a dedicated left coming northbound, and then of course it will be widened on the southbound direction as well, but they don't have a dedicated turn lane coming south, but there will be that dedicated turn lane coming north.
Jeff, to satisfy my curiosity from a historical standpoint, can I assume that there have not been any proposed usage projects for this property in recent times under the current zoning that would fit the current zoning?
This property has been on the market for quite some time. At least the larger parcel has been. The Chappelle-owned property adjacent to the funeral home was a recent addition. We have had people looking at it for options for contractors with lay-down yards. There's been a number of different things that folks have started to look at because this property is in a family trust. So I believe that there's interest to go ahead and sell it.
Beth, you mentioned on this proposal, the improvements on the left turn lane heading north. On the Ashton Forest subdivision, which has already been approved, was that the same, just heading north and just a left turn lane into there and no dedicated right turn lane into that project? That was staff approved because it was already rezoned, correct?
I believe that was the case because if it didn't require a TIA, which I don't think that it did, it probably would have just been a right turn out of the existing lane, but the dedicated left going north.
Okay. So dedicated left on both projects, but no dedicated right on either project, as far as you know?
As far as I know. I can double check.
Well, that unit, that proposal was R9, so it had less units than this, if I'm mistaken. Was it? Between 45
I think it was
and
about
50?
45-ish units.
Okay.
And those generated a little over 10 trips per day. So again, you're looking at about 450, 460 trips.
All right. Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Y'all prepared to make a motion?
Oh, wait a minute, Mr. Mayor, we need to, I know the hour's not as early as it used to be, but we need to have an opportunity for the applicant to bring forward any expert witnesses it has on the site plan. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Beth Whiteman, 113 Logger Lane, Garner, with Timmons Group, the engineering firm for this. We worked with the developer and with the town to come up with a plan that met the code and the requirements with the rezoning and the subdivision plan. And I've heard your questions. The TIA was not required for this number of units, but we do have to meet with DOT and get a driveway permit, and they're the ones that require a left turn lane into the site, pretty much irregardless of, you could be putting 2 houses and you'd still be putting a turn lane. So the road widening is required by the town of Garner as part of your Garner Forward Transportation Plan. And we work out the stub streets and connect to the, Ashton Forest subdivision, which has been approved. So with stormwater is being met with the proposed pond. And so we've just worked really hard. The back area is not very accessible, and so at this time it didn't have a lot of benefit to our access of the site, but we wanted to leave the possibilities open because at the end of Curtis Drive there's that small parcel, and this would make that parcel more usable, and the same off of the street stub to the south. So if you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them.
What, you've heard some of the concerns regarding the exterior siding that's to be used. Was there any consideration given to, shall I say, an upgrade or something different than what is being proposed?
Well, that is a question for the developer, but we worked with the town to come up with the requirements. So we talked through the vinyl siding options, and then if you look in your conditions further down, there's conditions about masonry on the majority of each unit and stuff. So it's not, even with the vinyl, you will not just have vinyl.
I believe I saw that comment.
Anything else? If you think of anything else, thank you.
The applicant have anyone else?
We hear from the developer again. Heard the discussion about the exterior materials. Anything you'd like to comment on that?
We take a hard look at all of the exterior cladding materials. There is a cost benefit that you have to weigh, and some of the things that we have to weigh are current market conditions, what the homes will appraise for versus what we can charge for them and feel like we can actually sell a home at. And there are certain items that do not necessarily capture the same value in the marketplace as the cost that they incur. Hardy plank is one of those. So a way for us to treat the exteriors of the home, provide them with a sturdy, durable cladding, is to incorporate those masonry elements and then use the higher gauge vinyl as well.
So the front has at least, ever how many homes are in a cluster, one of them doesn't have to have, one of them can have a vinyl front. The rest of them's got to have some portion of it as masonry.
As a minimum standard, yes, sir. Yes, sir, that's correct.
But not the entire front, just a portion of the front.
Correct.
Okay. Something slightly less than 50% of the front face.
They vary by elevations, and it's hard for me to tell you an exact percentage, but they typically vary from water tables up to, all the way up to the second floor. It just depends on the elevation.
That would, if it went from the water table to the bottom of the second floor, then it'd be something less than 50%. As a minimum, you got 4 units in a group.
Yes, sir.
So instead of 8 outside walls, you've got 2 outside walls on either end. But it's through your calculations that using something besides or eliminating vinyl would reach the tipping point on the sales price.
Yes, sir.
Talk to us about what the market is, and just educate us, if you would, please, on why this was not R9 and designed that way.
So a lot of it has to do with the specific site elements. So you have got, if you look at the main drive going north-south of the site, you've got about a 40-foot fall from the back of where those units are on the east side of that street to the back of the units that are on the west side of that street. So you've got a significant grade change that has to be overcome through grading, retaining walls. You also have a very rocky area. It's really hard rock. It's granite. It's going to require significant excavation efforts. So you've got a lot of site elements of the site that drive development costs. With that as the underpinning, we start adding up what's going to cost to actually put a lot on the ground, and that's really what determines the product. The market, if you look at Garner as a whole, you start, once you get over 300,000, I'm using round numbers, you start getting into a pretty large estate, the upper tier of the market, and that's obviously not conducive to the lot count that you would have on here. The cost of development versus the number of units you would be able to get to hit an R9 would make this project infeasible. The crossings, especially to be able to hit that sort of yield, those are extremely costly, both from the actual culverts that it would cost or that it would take to cross them, to carry the drainage area that goes through the site, but also the actual permitting of that crossing. So on a price per foot basis, what we are proposing or what we're expecting to is already sort of pushing that boundary a little bit, but we feel like the market's coming, and it's an underserved product segment within the market. That's why our kind of target range of 220 to 240 is where we feel it's an acceptable range for townhomes, where we think we will have success there. But that is definitely starting to push the product or push the price point for that product. You can still find single-family homes.
I would agree that there's an underserved element in the county, and it's all pointed towards Garner.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Not in a good sense.
Oh, well.
And I'm not belittling it. You've got to look at, yes, you were right, from Creeks Road to the end of the dead end, you've got more than a 70-foot drop. That makes it difficult to put R9 housing out there. That's just, market in Garner as of today would not support the R9 on that piece of property due to its development cost. I mean, I can see that. My only rub is the quality of materials. Would you consider making as a minimum, you got some stone, maybe there's some brick. I didn't see the brick. Is there some brick?
In the elevations, there are brick.
Okay.
Masonry is the intent is to include stone and brick in there.
Would you consider as a condition is at least the entire front face on all of the buildings for at least to be a minimum of hardy plank, and then if you're just going to make the ends on the vinyl?
It would be extremely cost prohibitive for us to do that. The cost difference between the siding of hardy plank and full masonry is considerable. And consider what the market will bear.
Yeah, I would, not for you, but for the public, we failed miserably 10 years ago trying to legislate the price of a home in Garner. But at the same time, we're trying to learn how to elevate the prices in Garner, and that's a current and long-range objective. We've got to grow ourselves out of being the lowest priced place in Garner. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your honesty to your answers.
One other question that probably has an obvious answer, but in terms of amenities, obviously, this calls for one-car garages. Is that driven as much by, you know, the square footage of the product that you're building, or is it?
Yes.
A lot of people, it seems to me, have two cars these days, but at any rate, maybe that doesn't have much to do with your assessment of how many the two-car garage.
Typically, it depends on the buyer type that's in the homes and the areas that they're in. You know, one car, we're seeing more younger families are driving less, and again, you know, I can't tell the future, but the fewer folks are driving homes, and they're driving fewer cars and less, has been the long-term trend.
So in essence, you're saying, yeah, the demand is not there for two-car garages?
Correct. It gets used more as storage than anything else.
Okay.
A question for you, but in reference to what you said about driving less, those individuals are typically located in areas where they have other modes of transportation, such as buses, rail.
I'm just speaking to the, you know, and it's probably more anecdotal than anything. It's not a finding of fact, but in my experience, I'm seeing young people that are driving less, waiting longer to drive. We hear stories all the time of people with grown kids that are, you know, 18, 19 years old that still don't have their driver's permit, which is a foreign thing to me, but that seems to be a trend. There's more ride share. There's more people that are taking Lyfts and Ubers, shared driving, zip cars, things like that are alternative modes of transportation. I'm not, you know, again, can't foretell the future, just something that's where we're seeing in other parts of the country.
What do you say, Mr. Attorney?
Mr. Triesenberg has some more.
Mr. Triesenberg has something to mention to us.
I just did want to come back and just clarify for you, Councilmember Singleton. I was able to pull up the Ashton Forest plans. It is just one continuous lane southbound with the dedicated lefts going northbound. It's a 12-foot center turn lane with 16 feet on the outside of each to accommodate both a travel lane and a bike lane if needed, and then the curb and gutter.
So is that continuous from here all the way to and through Ashton Forest? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So it's one, at least the turn lane is at least continuous. That road improvement on the west side is continuous from one property line to the other? Okay.
Well, you're still here. I think it was Mr. Wilson that raised a question about getting access to the folks that live on the east side of Creech Road, getting access to sewer that runs along the back side of this property. Looking at the topo on the right side or on the east side, there was only one topo line, but I gather, just trying to interpret what I saw with the topo lines, it looks like that the land slopes downward and away from, slopes downward to the east of Creech Road, meaning that perhaps there might be a couple of unique places that are facing the road that might gain access to sewer, but once you're off one or two lots, no chance of it.
Right. There's Creech and Wilmington both are kind of high points, and so there's a creek bed that's about halfway between those two roads, and that is one of those basins that doesn't have a trunk line coming up through it to serve it. That may change, but for now, you're exactly right. Some of the properties that front right up on Creech Road might be able to gravity over, but otherwise they're going to fall off the other way.
Yep. I think if you went further down, went further north, it's not on this map, if you went further north, there's a sewer line, and it cuts across
Cuts across, yeah.
Creech Road. So the folks that live to the east side, you have to go out the back side, but it'll, that's an expensive proposition. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I believe it's time to close the hearing.
Going to close the hearing. Call for a motion. There's two, I think. Are you ready to vote on the motion?
On the right place. I'll get a motion on the floor.
Please.
Find it inconsistent with the comp plan and move to deny.
Second.
Motion. Is there a second?
Have a second.
Other discussion?
Question, do you not have to say that when you make that motion right there? Motion, I think that needs to be stated, this is finding consistent with, and I think you need to state that more specifically, just based off this new and improved worksheet we have.
So what we're doing, we're going to close the public hearing before we move further.
So the zoning
He's getting ready to state it. Think.
I believe that motion would be under item 2 instead of
sir.
item 3.
Yes, sir.
I'll move that the town council find the rezoning request inconsistent with the Garner Forward Comp Plan for the fact that it's inconsistent with the density, but not in the long-term interest for the town and the quality of housing, and therefore I move further that the town council reject the recommendation of the planning commission and deny the zoning request number CUDZ 1903.
Second.
Motion is second, further discussion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Next matter on the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mayor and council, is the number SUP 1805 Holiday Inn. First presenter here will be Allison Jones from the Planning Department, and then we'll hear from the applicant's witnesses. And ladies and gentlemen, the comments that I made before about the conditional use permit will apply to this special use permit in this Holiday Inn case. All the same bells and whistles we talked about before. All right, the hearing will now be open in the Holiday Inn case.
Good evening. I'm Allison Jones, and I'm presenting the case for Holiday Inn, SUP SP 1805. The applicant is A&H Hospitality, and they also own the property. The parcel is located at 312 US 70 East. The tract size is about a little bit more than 5 acres. The Planning Commission meeting was held on July 15th, and we're here today for the Town Council Public Hearing Action Meeting. As I mentioned before, the site is roughly 5 acres. The proposed use is a hotel. The zoning right now is split zone. It's zoned service business in I-1. The hotel use is expressly allowed under service business and is allowed under I-1 district as well. Landscape and buffer requirements. The tree coverage area is being met by existing plant material. The perimeter buffers on the western side of the project, 15-foot buffer adjacent to existing commercial use, will use existing, and this buffer will use existing plant material to meet its requirements. Also located within this perimeter buffer is the Neuse River riparian buffer that will be mostly left undisturbed. The eastern 15-foot buffer is being met with existing plant material as well. I will perform the site inspection to determine if additional plantings will be required in those buffers. In the street buffers along US 70, the additional plantings are being proposed there as well. The fire department, along with the inspections department, have reviewed and approved the plan as proposed. This site does not contain any FEMA designated floodplain, but it is subject to Neuse River riparian buffer rules for the identified streams, and there's no land disturbance being proposed in these environmentally sensitive areas. For stormwater management, the site is located on US 70 near New Rand Road. The site is not located within any watershed protection area. There is a jurisdictional stream, and therefore the Neuse riparian buffer that runs along the east and south borders of the site. The site is subject to water quality requirements for nitrogen and water quantity, and nitrogen offset payment will be required for this plan for approval. Water and sewer connections to adjacent public water and sewer are proposed. There's a 16-inch water line runs along US 70, and there's an 8-inch sewer line that runs, an 8-inch sewer manhole in the southern rear of the site where the connection will be made. Infrastructure, roads, and sidewalks. There will be a turn lane provided on US 70 to allow for vehicles to turn into the site. There is proposed internal sidewalk and will connect to the proposed sidewalk that will be along US 70. Curb and gutter and widening will be provided along US 70 per NCDOT requirements in keeping with the 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan and the US 70 401 Overlay District. And this is, the site plan. Parking is based on one space per room and one space for every 2 employees on a maximum shift. They are required to have 112 parking spaces with 88 parking spaces. They're providing 138 with 5 accessible. This is a type of lighting. Lighting has been reviewed by staff and is consistent with the UDO and policies. The building material and color. The building is being constructed of cultured stone and brick and ephes. The building colors are tan, white, and pennywise and special gray. The 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan recommends a 6-lane divided highway for US 70. This site has limited frontage, but the road improvements will be provided, including the lane widening for the right turn lane, the curb, gutter, and sidewalks. The proposed plans may be considered consistent with the recommendations of the 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan. After review of Parks and Recreation Open Space Greenways Master Plan, there are no recommendations for this site, so as proposed, the site may be considered consistent with the Parks and Recreation Open Space and Greensway Master Plan. After sufficient review and plan revision, staff find this project as proposed conforms to the regulations of the UDO so long as the site-specific conditions are met. Prior to the issuance of the first building permit, excuse me, this is a typo, I forgot to delete this off, so forgive me. So scratch number 1 is really 3. Prior to receipt of approved plans, the engineering department inspection fees must be paid paid to Town of Garner. Prior to the issuance of the first building permit, all applicable water and sewer fees must be paid to the City of Raleigh Public Utilities Department. And prior to the issuance of the first building permit, the stormwater administrator shall be in receipt of proof of payment for the required nitrogen offset payment to an approved mitigation bank. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their July 15th meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously confirmed staff's findings in Section 5 that SP 1805 Holiday Inns in conformity with adopted town plans and policies. Are there any questions for staff?
How many rooms are in the facility?
I believe 107, I believe.
107?
Am I correct? Yes.
Somewhere on there is, so the ingress, egress into this property, it's before you get to the Wake Med Center, but is it just beyond the property that's on the right, what is it,
I believe it's the store and the car wash. It's a
Yeah.
gas station and a car wash, yes.
road, would there be a left turn access off of 70 if you're going west, or this is just strictly a right in?
Right in, right out. Mhm.
Okay, this is a public hearing. If anybody wants to speak to it, please come forward.
Time for the applicant to have you have some witnesses.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Harold Yell. I'm with A&H. I'm a professional engineer and professional land surveyor. And I'm here to answer any questions. We are proud to be part of Garner. I've been surveying in this area for 45 years, so I feel like I've helped grow it. But I think this is a good project, and we did set it up with a meeting room that used to be a pool area. We feel like it's meeting rooms of adequate size are not being fulfilled in this area. And we feel like that we'll be a good neighbor and contribute to the well-being of the town. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions?
Yes, sir. Mr. Yell, Brian Smith is the engineer of record?
Yes, sir. We're a sister firm, Aiken and Yale. And Brian Smith, we are both on the letterhead, but he has signed and sealed. He's out of Charlotte. He's actually under contract to me to provide those services to A&H. So he's actually under my direction and supervision.
Be with Mr. Aiken, but the reason I asked a question about the
Mr. Aiken, Arnold Aiken.
First town manager in Garner.
Oh yeah, you know, he's still cooking, and I still go play golf with him every Friday, every once in a while. It's cool enough for him.
About that, but I'll see him on Sunday. But the
Right
reason
now-
I asked a question about the number of units, I get concerned when you got the primary times of usage, particularly early morning and the late evening or the evening hours. put a real burden on an 8-inch sewer line. So, Chris, you didn't see any problem on that, did you? Oh, that's City of Raleigh. Okay. But,
It is my
I did a quick
experience that an
calculation.
8-inch line is more than suitable to handle 107 units, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
None here.
All right, thank you for your time once again.
Anyone else for the applicant? Close the hearing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, hearing closed. Are we ready for a motion? Go ahead.
Mayor, as it relates to it.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, but some people in the audience wanted to.
Excuse me?
I think you called the applicant, but were there people, I'm not trying to talk about the term.
Opponents? Are there
Opponents
any
or, no one called for opponents or
opponents?
people
There's
that want
others
to
that want
talk.
to speak.
Well, this is not a zoning hearing. It's just a site permit. Does anybody from the public have any questions? You can't give admissible testimony, but you can come up and ask any questions you want to ask. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chandra Banner. I am a 10-year resident of Garner, North Carolina, living at 105 Oakton Ridge Place and Sheldon Place off of New Rand. My major concern is traffic and property value. I have 2 small children. I would love to stay in the general area. It's convenient for me. I feel like this would be an inconvenience for my family and other families in that little area. There are a pocket of residential areas back there that we've experienced increased traffic. My concern is that if you have this space so close to New Rand, we'll receive even more traffic, making it more impossible to leave our neighborhoods. Property value, I was reading about other Holiday Inns, and the concerns were similar to mine, that you have hotel chains boasting mid-price, but providing less than stellar accommodations. That potentially it would be more budget, and that would reflect on the value of the homes in the area. Those are my concerns.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll have to comment that the legislature has specifically said and has just reiterated that since value is something that appraisers are experts at, and since traffic is something that engineers are experts at, it's, testimony by a layman on this subject is inadmissible, so I hope you understand.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now let's start. We had a motion.
There's another one.
Mayor, council members, my name is Jessica Delaney. I live at 135 Brockton Ridge Drive, also in Sheldon Place neighborhood, to the south of this proposed property. I have a similar concern, but it's more so that our neighborhood, we worked hard on being established. I'm a 10-year resident as well. Many of us have lived there for a very long time now in Sheldon Place. Having a 5-story hotel in our backyard, we do concern about privacy. Many of us have little children. It's a very much a family neighborhood. This is a hotel that we're looking over from the treescape. The higher levels will be looking into our backyards and into our properties. So it is a concern of ours as far as if this is a good location for this. Obviously, this is not a zoning meeting by any means. We were kind of surprised, honestly, to hear that there is a hotel coming to this property when we have all those empty lots over by Wet Oak and Target and other areas in town here. To see such a large development, such a tall development coming into the property adjacent to ours. So I just wanted to voice the concern on behalf of many of them others in our neighborhood about the privacy and the intake of visitors to the area for that lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've already been, you can't come anymore.
Sir?
No, don't take.
My name again is Harold Yell. take the concern of the young woman about the 5 stories. This property drops off a lot from Highway 70, so most of the building is going to be hidden by the existing tree canopy that's behind the car wash and the C-store. In fact, if we could pull up the topographic map of the construction drawings, I can demonstrate that.
I don't have a
There's
topographic
probably 35 or 40 feet of drop from the back parking lot of the car wash down to our finished floor. So we may have the top floor sticking out above those 45-foot pine trees, but as far as any visibility to any neighborhood or any other property, it's going to be very difficult because we are kind of down in the hole. And as far as traffic goes, you know, I understand there is a concern of traffic in Garner, but I think this road is suitable. NCDOT doesn't see any limitations to it. We're about to get our driveway permit. And as far as this particular hotel in Holiday Inn Express, it's owned by A&H Hospitality, which actually has roots to Park Hospitality, which is a well-known hospitality company. They own all kinds of products, including Homewood Suites, DoubleTree, Hilton, True Hotels. So they're very experienced, and they've been in the business a long time. They have, last time I checked, they've got 5 stars on their website. So as far as quality and quality of clients are going to be using this, I don't think we have anything to worry about. Thank you.
Got a question for Allison. Allison, do we have any, do you happen to have any idea of the zoning of this site? How long it's been zoned that would allow it to be, to allow a hotel here?
I don't know how long this site has been zoned.
A long, long time.
That was my point.
A long time.
Was the zoning, did it predate the, it didn't predate the, where Miss Phillips lives, I doubt it, but further south, Sheldon Place, I was just trying to get a feel for when that was rezoned. Sheldon Place has been there, what, 10 years, 12?
Roughly.
Approximately,
Just-
about 10, 12 years.
Okay. Okay, well,
I'm
without
not sure.
disagreement, I think you've answered my question. Appreciate it.
Close the hearing, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Yeah, I'll do it again. Meeting's closed. Ready for motion?
Just a quick comment. I appreciate you taking the time to come out to a meeting and express your thoughts on this. From my perspective, I believe Gerald has answered those concerns appropriately. Good thing both in the short term and the long term. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to I'm going to move that the council accept the staff statements regarding plan consistency in section 4 of this report as our own and find the application meets the 10 permit criteria in section 3.14.d, and therefore approve SUP SP 1805 Holiday Inn with the 3 standard conditions and with the 4 site-specific conditions to be listed on the permit that will be prepared by the staff.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Close discussion, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Okay, we got CUP 1903. Lauren Long.
Mr. Mayor, you want to proceed with that one, or you want to take a break?
Mr. Mayor, we'll take a break.
Yeah, are y'all ready to take a break, or you want to stay a while? All right, let's do a 10-minute recess.
Paper, CUP-SP 1903.
This is a public hearing. Couldn't get it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
We were meeting tonight, August 5th, and the Planning Commission heard this site on July 15th. The applicant is Tony M. Tate, Landscape Architecture, and the owner is Martin Holdings LLC. The site is located at 140 Spaceway Court, and the tract size is approximately 4.93 acres. The proposed uses are warehouse and office. The current zoning is I2 with the conditional use district overlay of C157. Both of these proposed uses are expressly allowed under the I2 and conditional use district. Tree coverage requirements of 12% are being met with existing and proposed plant material. The plan currently shows 14.3% tree coverage area. For the perimeter buffers on the eastern side, there's a 65-foot perimeter buffer provided to the east abutting the Camelot subdivision. 50 feet of that is the undisturbed buffer, which is required by the conditional use zoning, which was rezoned in 2008. And there is 15 feet of a planted perimeter buffer. There is also a 15-foot buffer, horizontal district separation only, adjacent to the short section along the Spaceway Court cul-de-sac. The Inspections Department, together with the Fire Department, have reviewed and approved this plan. The site does not contain any FEMA-designated floodplain, and there is no proposed land disturbance in any environmentally sensitive areas. The site is located in White Oak Business Park East, which is not located within the watershed protection area, and the site is subject to water quality requirements for nitrogen only. A nitrogen offset payment will be required. A downstream hydrology study was performed for White Oak Business Park East with the rezoning in 2008 and demonstrated any detention on site would increase flows to nearby White Oak Creek. Therefore, detention was not required for any of the parcels within White Oak Business Park East. The site will be served by City of Raleigh water and sewer infrastructure through an existing water line on Spaceway Court and an existing sewer connection located at the northwest corner and along the southern property line of the site. For infrastructure improvements, they're proposing approximately 90 feet of sidewalk as well as curb and gutter for the north side along Spaceway Court. This is the 50-foot undisturbed buffer in the blue that you see and the additional 15-foot planted buffer with the berm that is also a condition of the conditional use zoning that was rezoned in 2008. For parking, they have the separated uses of warehouse, which is one space for every 2 employees on the maximum shift, and office, which is one space for every 300 square feet, which brings them to a total of required parking of 21 spaces. They are proposing 26. Proposed lighting meets the requirements of the lighting ordinance as well as meeting staff recommendations for LED fixtures. All fixtures have zero uplight, low glare, and a warm light exhibiting a color temperature of no more than 4,000 Kelvin. The building elevations propose painted CMU to match vertical and horizontal metal wall panels, as well as accent brick, and there will also be a standing seam metal roof and 9 roll-up doors on the western elevation. The 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan does not provide a recommendation for Spaceway Court. Therefore, this project, as proposed, may be found in conformity with the 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan. A review of the Parks and Recreation, Open Space, and Greenways Master Plan revealed no plan recommendations in the project area. Therefore, this project, as proposed, may be considered consistent with the Parks and Recreation, Open Space, and Greenways Master Plan. And after sufficient review and plan revision, staff finds that this project, as now proposed, conforms to the regulations of the Unified Development Ordinance so long as the site-specific conditions are met. Those conditions are as follows. Prior to receipt of approved plans, an engineering department inspection fees must be paid to the town of Garner, and that prior to issuance of the first building permit, all applicable water and sewer fees must be paid to the City of Raleigh Public Utilities Department. And finally, that prior to issuance of the first building permit, the Stormwater Program Administrator shall be in receipt of proof of payment for the required nitrogen offset payment to an approved mitigation bank. And as we said before, the Planning Commission reviewed this request at their July 15, 2019 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously confirmed staff's findings in Section 5 that CUP SB 1903 Tar Heel paper is in conformity with adopted town plans and policies. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have of me.
Question. Ms. Long, from you're looking at the site, does the building look essentially consistent with the other buildings around it?
It does. It's a industrial business park, so most of them are CMU and metal seam standing buildings.
Other council member have questions or comments?
Good presentation, I would say. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are you prepared to make a motion?
Maybe someone from the applicant, Mr. Mayor, who wants to be heard.
Yes, there it is.
See a lady making her way forward.
I believe that's the one.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Pam Porter with TMTLA Associates, 5011 South Park Drive in Durham. Thank you for letting us show you our project tonight. Tar Heel Paper is a distributor of packaging and janitorial products, and they're excited to be in Garner. They're looking to expand in this area, and White Oak was the perfect place for them to find a lot and expand their business. The White Oak Architectural Review Committee did approve the building, and it is similar to the other buildings in White Oak Business Park. There was one comment that came out of Planning Commission, which we did address with these plans. We did switch one of the shrubs that was on the plans to something that one of the members of Planning Commission suggested that we use, but otherwise that was the only change that we had from Planning Commission. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Questions?
Anyone else from the applicant?
We'll close the public hearing. Call for motion.
I move that the council accept the staff statements regarding plan consistency, section 4 of the report, this report, as our own, and find the application meets the 10 permit criteria in section 3.14.d. Therefore, approve CUP SP 1903 Tar Heel paper with the 3 standard conditions and the 3 site-specific conditions to be listed on the permit that will be prepared by the staff.
Second. Motion and second. Further discussion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Very good. All right, new and old business. Got any? Where is it, Ken?
That's it.
Okay, you're up, Matt, with renaming, right?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Yeah, you all probably remember that in your, in June of this year, you all just passed a policy that would govern how you might approach renaming facilities if you were to get a request from a citizen, for example. And now that that policy has been approved, you do have such a request before you today. So I'm going to turn it over just a minute to Ms. Michelle Collins, who is here to present the request. Before I do, I just wanted to remind everybody real quick of what the policy requires, just so that you'll know that when you're considering the request from her. Basically, this section here that has the A, B, C, D, and E specifies that you have to submit in writing what facility you're talking about naming or renaming, what name you're proposing, why, what are the reasons, and how is it consistent with the policy, evidence of community support, and then evidence of support from the individual or the family of the individual that you might be honoring. And then at that point, obviously, you all can take any range of actions that you normally would be able to as council. So nothing new there, but just a quick reminder of what's in the policy. And if there are no immediate questions, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Collins to make the request, and then she and I will both be available for questions.
Good evening. Thank y'all again for me coming in front of you.
I've turned everything. I have to thank Mr. Matt for all his help in reference to turning everything into him as A, B, C, D, E, F. The only thing that I don't have is the community support, and I have 1,019 signatures on a petition of local citizens in Garner that support this idea. As I said before, Deacon Jackie John, with Councilman Jackie John, was very influential in Garner and in our community in reference to our park. He actually had an opportunity to visit last year. We have an event every year, September the 7th of this year. It's the Saturday after Labor Day. And he was actually had an opportunity to attend last year, so that's why we only see fit to actually be able to rename the park. It is also his community, also where him and his wife raised their 2 sons together. So again, like I said, I have the petitions right here. I've submitted the letter to Mr. Matt in reference to where his family agrees. I sent a proposal to Mr. Mack. I think he gave it to you all so you all could read on it. So now I'm available for any questions that you might have.
And actually, just for the benefit of the audience or people that might not know, could you go ahead and say what park, what facility you're talking about renaming and what the name is?
It's Rand Mill Road Park. It's located on Smith Drive and Rand Mill. The park used to be located at the corner of Smith Drive and Bagwell, but it's a creek that ran behind there. So as a kid growing up, it would rain and we couldn't go to the park. We had 3 little hoppy horses, a grill, and a picnic table. So in the early 1980s, we actually got the bigger park, and 13 acres, and this facility with a basketball court, a picnic table. It's just a bigger place for us. I think it saved a lot of kids in my generation to actually give us somewhere to go to other than the streets. So again, it's the renaming of Rand Mill Road Park to Jackie John Community Park.
Just a personal comment. I've been by the park sometime in the past, but I took time to ride by there today. I'm probably going to ask if Public Works or somebody can get by there and do a little mowing out there. They ought to clean it up just a little bit. But I'm curious to know, was the field ever formerly used for a baseball diamond? It looks like it was laid out that way, where there's not one specifically there now. Maybe it's just a practice field. Do you know if...
A practice field. Mainly for us, it's kickball. We do kickball down there. Yes, sir. I'm not a baseball gal. We do kickball, but I have seen people down there practicing a lot down on the baseball field.
Looks like it would certainly serve well as a practice field. It's not a formal diamond there, but it certainly would allow for that, I think.
More so in my teenage years, it was the basketball. We met every Sunday, and we just played basketball down there every Sunday. I actually had a video, and I had submitted it, Matt, but it wasn't in the correct format, and we had a video that we was going to present tonight. But again, like I said, it wasn't in the correct format for me to be able to present it.
I think it's safe to say we have to believe Jackie's looking down tonight. He's pleased at what he sees.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Collins, what is the name that you're recommending? The name?
Jackie John's Community Park. Again, like I said, the event is September the 7th, and I would like to invite each and every one of you to attend. We're going to have a program for we can actually reveal what we are changing the name to.
Very good.
I like to also announce, let me say who I got with me, if y'all don't mind. Reverend Tracy Bell, Dorothea Griffin, and Greg Hinton. They also came with me tonight to support what we're trying to do.
I commend you. You must have had some help to get all those signatures, by the way.
Yes, sir. We put the petitions at the local churches and the local barber shops, and people were just calling and coming from everywhere to get it done. Yes.
Not well done.
We had a gentleman tonight, I don't know if you heard him, he talked about Garner and how he went to the local restaurant when one of the waitresses told him that Garner had good peoples. Well, you know how many times I heard Mr. John say it's the peoples that make Garner? Mm-hmm. Many times.
Yes.
I thought about that. As soon as he said that, I thought, gosh, I've heard Jackie John say that in a form of that many, many times.
Yes.
It's the peoples that make Garner. So, if we need a motion here, or how do we do this?
I would do that, but make it formal.
Move we take the recommendation here presented by Ms. Collins and the Smith Drive Community Reunion Committee, and formally change the name of Rand Mill Road Park to Jackie John's Community Park.
Second motion. Second motion.
Motion and second, all in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Better not be an aye.
Thank you. Y'all, please come to the event on the 7th, though. We do hot dog hamburgers. This is our 4th year. We've been doing it, like I said, for 4 years, and we're really looking for a big event. So it's a Saturday after Labor Day, and please come down and just
Saturday,
enjoy.
you said.
Time.
Saturday.
Thank you for the invitation.
We start at 2 o'clock, right, Greg? Yeah, 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, okay? Yeah, we'll have media and everything.
Very good. I will be available.
He will be available. Thank y'all so very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Just one, Mr. Mayor, just one matter of logistics. There will, I guess, at some point need to be a sign change, and I guess we'll look into that. I don't know the timing of that and how long it will take, but we'll have to look at that and then bring the costs and all of that back to you.
Very good.
Logistically, we'll see what we can do as far as getting it there by the time your park opens, but if we keep the same style of sign, I'm not sure about the timing on those wood graphic type signs, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Well,
Thank you.
we'll have something appropriate.
Thank you very much. Thank y'all again.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Good presentation.
Committee reports.
Well, I have a item to bring up from the Public Works Committee. There's been a proposal made in regards to Trade Street. Trade Street is off Highway 401, has several businesses that are located there. Trade Street's between Winterlock and off 401 and Pine Winds Drive. I'm going to direct this to Mr. Hodges, and he and Mr. Johnson may discuss this. It's about a recommendation in regards to extending the pavement on there. One of the business owners is willing to work with the town on extending that pavement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Singleton. I'm going to get Mr. Johnson to come up. He's got a little bit of a presentation to show you. I know we're bringing this to you a little bit in not a typical fashion, but we do have some timing constraints or timing opportunities with this, and we appreciate the Public Works Committee's entertaining this and also bringing it to you tonight for your consideration. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris Johnson, the Engineering Department. Yeah, Trade Street, it's an existing town-maintained street that was originally platted back in the 1950s. There were a few parcels near the intersection of Trade Street and US 401 that were developed at that time. You may know them today, as this is the area where they've got Promo and Joy Cleaners building on one corner, and then the other corner is sort of a shared retail with East Coast Granite, Savage Tattoos, and the Vapor and E-Cig stores. That part of the street that was built originally has pavement, and I'll show you some pictures. This is a vicinity map showing sort of where we are. Those two properties I'm talking about were originally here and here. So they paved along those two properties, but the existing asphalt pavement ended at the back property lines. The rest is an existing gravel road today. So sort of a blown up area. And the owner of 200 Trade Street is owned and operated by the Banda family, who's here tonight. And they operate out of these two buildings back here. They have been working with JB Auto Upholstery, and they basically work with high-end classic car upholstery. And they've been working out of those two buildings. They were originally a tenant and been working there since the 2007, and then purchased those two properties outright earlier this year. So they approached the town. They've actually earlier this year has paved the parking lots in the front of these two buildings right up to the property line, or for the public right-of-way, and have also done several exterior improvements to their building facades. So this is sort of a picture as you're looking where the asphalt pavement ends, looking down towards the end of the street, and of course you can see the new pavement that they have recently installed along the building frontages. And that's sort of a blow up a little bit further down the road. And they've repainted the frontage of those buildings. So we've done a cost estimate for improving the remaining gravel portion. This is one of the very few gravel streets in the town of Garner. There's two sections. The first section was the area that the owner had agreed to provide a cost share. If we were to use the current resurfacing contract, we've done some numbers crunching, and it looks like about $15,000 to finish paving the street. This isn't adding any curb and gutter. It's not adding storm drainage improvements. And I will also note that the existing street doesn't exactly run along the center of the right-of-way. So at some future point, and there's still several vacant parcels here, here, and here, that could be developed. Once those are developed, then we could actually realign the street, add the curb and sidewalk, and start doing those measures. But right now, what we're trying to do is just get rid of the gravel. The auto upholstery business, they're running, the dust provides a lot of problems for them and their customers, and that's been the main reason they're wanting to see the street resurfaced. The other part was the western section, the area that I told you had already been paved. Staff went ahead and did a cost estimate for that section too, if we were going to overlay or pave the existing gravel just to make it more consistent and have it, since it's really a pretty small cul-de-sac overall, the additional cost to just overlay that extra portion would be about an additional $5,000. So the agreement terms that we had talked about as draft for council's consideration, JB Auto Upholstery had agreed to spend $6,000 to $8,000 towards the trade street paving, and that's in section 1. So staff recommends 50-50 cost share on that section, which would equate to approximately $7,500 each. And then staff would recommend, if council wants to make this a consistent street overlay so we don't have to come back later to do the other half at a later date, then we could also do section 2 and the town pay that at 100% for an extra $4,750. The property owner did make one request, was that they've done, as I stated, they've done a lot of improvements very recently along their frontage. They requested 6 months to a year time period to reimburse the town for their cost share on section 1. So the recommendation for staff is for town council's concurrence with the recommendation to finalize a cost share and reimbursement terms with the town, between the town and JB Auto Upholstery, to authorize the town manager to execute a municipal agreement with JB Auto Upholstery for the section 1 portion of the work, and then to also authorize the town manager to execute a change order with our with Garner and Associates, who is managing our annual resurfacing contract. We have had preliminary talks with them, and they are receptive to adding this work into their contract. And that, by the way, that contract is approximately 50% complete, and they are anticipating the majority of the paving for the remaining streets to be done this month.
Very good, very good.
Which is why we're bringing it to you now. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions. And as I said, the Banda family, Mr. Jose, Letty, and their daughter Alondra are all here in case you have questions for them.
Go back to the previous slide, Chris. So the item in the middle, authorized town manager to execute a municipal agreement. So that's a municipal agreement, memorandum of understanding, contract, whatever, to reimburse the town within between 6 and 12 months after completion, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, I assume that's what a municipal agreement was. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, and just in case I didn't mention before, our annual resurfacing contract is based on unit cost. It is not a lump sum contract. So, of course, as I said before, this was based on estimated quantities. Those quantities could be a little more, a little less. We've done the best we can to estimate the cost, but we would imagine that this would be based on actual costs once we've got the quantities tied down.
I have seen the work, and it looks good. Y'all do good work. So you need a good driveway.
Anything that y'all would like to say?
I'm sorry.
Anything you would like to say?
We would just like to mention, like Chris mentioned earlier, we work with a lot of classic cars, and we've had many concerns by our customers bring up the fact that we have a lot of potholes in the gravel. When it rains, it creates big, large potholes. And most of them are a little hesitant when they come to us because they need to receive a quote, so they need to drive the vehicle to us first before they leave it with us. They're hesitant to drive it there because their cars get graded at car shows from underneath the car to the interior. So their main concern is the rocks hitting their vehicles. We don't get a lot of traffic down that way, but we've have had instances where we have people drive past really fast and they do throw rocks out. We haven't had anybody hit our cars, thankfully, but that's one of the main reasons why we want to get that street paved.
Could you give your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Alondra Banda, and I am Jose Juan Banda's daughter. And
Plus the fact that we don't have, we have very few, I mean, we should have paved streets, and so this is one of those that kind of, we don't see it, so we don't know about it. So the fact that you brought it to us, and it was brought to us to the Public Works Committee, is, we appreciate that, and your willingness to be a partner in trying to get this completed.
Yeah,
Because
thank
it's,
Muy bien, muy bien.
everyone will benefit.
Thank you.
So do we need to make a motion to authorize this? Mr. Mayor, I move we take the recommendation of the staff to finalize concurrence with staff and authorize the town manager to execute a municipal agreement with JB Auto Upholstery for Section 1 portion of the work.
Second, all in favor?
And add on the paving work for the front end, the resurfacing. That was not an original
Oh,
resurfacing.
that's right, and also for the work to be done in Section 2, I authorize staff to get that work done by the paving contractor, Gelder and Associates.
Got a motion? Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okey-dokey, Mr. Manager.
And while Mr. Johnson is at the podium, I'll go right to this item. We wanted to give you, Mr. Hodges, Mr. Johnson, want to give you an update on the 401 project. A few months ago, NCDOT presented the town with the plan to convert Highway 401 to a super street, and that included various medians and turnaround areas. And we have, I guess, a plan or preliminary plan, and we want to discuss some of the amenities or the configuration of that plan and some concerns we may have about it.
Right, so this is called for DOT, this is their TIP project U5302, which is the widening of 401 between, I believe, Mechanical Boulevard down to Old Stage Road, or just south of Old Stage. The project kind of showing that these are 75% plans, so they've gone through right away. I think they've actually progressed a little further, so they're coming up on final plan stage right now. Okay. And they brought this issue to staff last week, I believe, during their final plans review and some input from their value engineering staff. They felt that the median widths and the fact that some of these areas, since they are in a 6-lane divided area, and they are doing what you call a super street configuration, where you're trying to control turning movements in and out of some of the intersections. They are wanting to change they've gotten a recommendation to change the raised grass medians to concrete. They asked for staff's thoughts on that. Staff's initial response was that we felt that that would sort of take away from the character of the corridor. That's already going to be very high in impervious surface as it is, given that it is a 6-lane street, and to revise the few areas of grassed vegetative areas along the project to concrete would sort of be moving in the wrong direction, in our opinion. The DOT did not necessarily have an issue with retaining the grassed medians, but what they did request was if they did, that the town would maintain those medians moving ahead. So we have talked through planning department, the manager's office, and we've also talked or had discussions about how these are being handled in other municipalities around Wake County. And I think Jeff can, I won't speak on behalf of Jeff, but based on what we've talked about, this is not out of the norm, and this is how it's been being handled in other areas. And I believe you said there's also areas along some of these highways that we are already maintaining today. Is that correct?
Yeah, we checked with Forrest over at Public Works, because he's taken over the beautification portion of the projects along 70, as well as the mowing maintenance contract, and had him contact Bland Landscaping just to get a ballpark figure of how much that would add to the contract on an annual basis. And I believe, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was
2,500
2,500
annually.
per year. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, we kind of skipped over the plans, but what we're talking about, you see the median to the left. We got 2 on this sheet, and you've got 1 on this sheet. That's 3 medians.
Chris, we're not going to be able to, I don't think
It's
we
a little
can really
tough
tell
for
what
the
that is. Would
scale.
you just zoom in to one median area and just point out to council
For
the
this
type of area they're
you've
looking
got-
at?
You've got, this is a double leftover into,
This is on stage and that, right?
this is Purser Drive.
That's
So
Purser, okay.
double left into Purser, so you've got
Alright.
grass median here.
Right there.
If you move down, heading south, you've got a double U-turn movement, but then you've got this larger grass median. And all these grass medians, they range anywhere from 10 feet in width to 23 feet in width. So it's quite a bit of room to install either grass, shrubs, or possibly even street trees that, at least the type that DOT wouldn't be considered to be hurtful to their clear zone requirements.
And by the time this project is constructed, if council chose for us to move ahead with grass medians, we could program this into a future year's budget cycle for the additional costs for the maintenance.
You got 2 more there.
It'll be a couple of 3 years before this is built, is it not?
Well, before it's completed, but it's coming up on final plans, so I would expect that it would probably begin construction sometime in early next year. I haven't looked at the exact schedule. They're getting close to completion.
Here's a concern I have, because I've seen this in other towns. They did this, and they went through, and they planted grass in the median. Grass came up, was not grass, it was weed, it was this, that, and the other. So they went back, they concreted some of it, and the rest, they did put some shrubs and some larapi in there to help hold it together and mulch. But the only concern is when you put grass up there and it's hard to cut, you got to close down traffic. I mean, to cut it where you're cutting there, this isn't like cutting Highway 70, where it's 10 feet wide. You got to put a truck out there and close the lane down. That's my only concern is be careful what you ask for, because you're going to, just go to Raleigh. Not being ugly about Raleigh, not taking anybody off from Raleigh on the camera. Go to Raleigh, leave here and go on South Wilmington Street, not South Saunders, and look at the grass. Unless they cut it last week, it looks horrible. No offense to Raleigh, but your grass looks horrible in South Wilmington. South Saunders is cut because that's considered more of a main entrance. But they've done this and done that. But if you can have grass out there and you let it get 2 and 3 feet tall, there's no need to have grass out there. Gray's opinion. I'm just saying what they did in another town in eastern North Carolina, they did some major improvements that looked good. But at first they put grass there and it looked horrible. So to go through and they could concrete in about half of it, and the other, they put larapi on the edge and some mulch and some shrubs. Because the maintenance was, I was out there one day when they had to close the streets to cut the grass. Well, you kind of defeat the purpose of creating a super street if you've got to close the street for a while to cut the grass. I'm just saying, be careful what you ask for by putting grass there.
And it doesn't, our recommendation isn't necessarily that we're recommending grass over mulch and shrubs. At this stage, a lot of times the way the DOT projects are held is they don't typically like having the landscape contracts as part of the road construction projects, so they recommend having like a percentage of the total project cost go towards a landscaping plan that's done afterwards. That way they can separate the roadway contractor portion of the work versus the landscape contractor portion of the work. So there is, if that is the way they plan to do this, then yes, they would probably put in some temporary grass over that interim time, but then we would have more information on what our desires are for the landscaping component that would be part of the landscape project. And if it's council's desire for that to remain in more of a natural area that's not grassed, but more mulch and shrubs and trees, then that is something that we could propose to DOT.
And if council's preference is the concrete medians, there's also the option to revert to the concrete medians as proposed by DOT.
Correct.
I'm sure there would be some who'd suggest that you could beautify it a little bit more if you just didn't do the concrete, but you always have to be concerned about the maintenance and something other than grass. I don't know how much it would cost. Trying to speak some for my fellow council member who's not here tonight, but at any rate, that'd be a nice consideration in my view.
What's that?
Some type of shrubbery or those kinds of things that would require.
A question in reference to the concrete median, are you reducing the median with concrete? Be the same
No,
width?
it would be the same, so that there would actually be some of these concrete medians that are 23 foot wide. And that is very wide for a monolithic island. So that's part of the problem for our thoughts, is that there's not a lot of islands out there that you see that are that width, and a lot of times when you have them, I know of one that was down the middle of Hillsborough Street there off of 440, and when you drive by it, it's not the best looking thing. They tend to collect a lot of asphalt debris and rocks, and it's not hidden at all by mulch and vegetation. It's right there for everyone to see. And if you think there's not going to be a lot of maintenance on the median for either grass or mulch, it's probably even less so if it's concrete. There's not really much to maintain, so it's just going to collect in that area.
Before, was DOT paying for the maintenance, or was the maintenance coming back to the town before the value engineering study?
Originally, they were supposed to be planted medians, and it was going to be maintained by the DOT.
With this possible change, will we have an opportunity to recommend what goes in there since we're maintaining it?
Have a opportunity to recommend what's going in the median?
Since we're maintaining it?
I would hope so. Yes. I'm sure that the DOT, as I said earlier, they may have certain limitations based on clear zone, so they may not want a large oak tree in the middle of Highway 70, but I would think that we would have some input on the types of species to be selected.
So there'll be a possibility of some beautification?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a motion to
When you
approve the
need a
recommendation?
answer on that.
We sort of need to answer pretty quickly because, as I stated, they came to us sort of late in this, and they are trying to move forward with final plans. They've asked us to I think they gave us an earlier deadline of like a week or two from the time they notified us, which was, like I said, last week.
If you don't remember a motion, make another one.
I would have asked us to consider.
Jeff's telling me August 11th was the date they gave us.
To consider a combination of two. Some of these narrow spots, I would leave as concrete to 23 foot wide. Yeah, I can see us putting something there. I would do a combination. I just, I wouldn't have grass narrowing down to a point, because that's, again, it's hard to maintain, and you're gonna have to, when it's narrow like this, you're gonna have to close off lane of traffic. I'm just saying, I don't think you understand this. Done. I've seen it too many towns I go in, but I would do a combination. At the narrow points, I would leave concrete, and the other points, I would put some kind of vegetation, but.
Yeah, and they've already shown, as you can see here, these darker areas
Yes.
are already concrete. So they pretty much, their standard is they're not going to put anything vegetated in an area that's less than about 8 or 10 feet, because they have certain size mowers that they use, and they can't do a turning radius any smaller than that. So that's why you see most of these medians, anytime they start to narrow down, they change over to concrete.
Another question, in reference to the concerns that Councilman Gray is bringing up for the maintaining of the median, do they take in consideration traffic control during those periods as to how to maintain and do this safely?
Okay. All right.
So I know for example, in Wake Forest on the 98 bypass, the town worked with DOT to come up with that planting plan. And when I was in Nightdale, we had input. Again, we just have to get in contact and request contact with whoever the roadside design person is for the landscaping, and they will work with us to implement something. But what they do in Wake Forest is where the medians are wide enough, it's a mountable curb, and the landscaping crews there will be a grass section that is wide enough that they can just pull off into, so they're not actually in traffic. They have enough room that they can unload their mowers off of the trailer. And then all of the areas that are grass are just as wide as their mowing equipment, so they can make a pass up and a pass back, and they're finished. So they don't actually have to block off lanes. They can just pull off into those medians where it's wide enough, and then access all the points that need to be mowed from there.
Just looking at the plans, it looks like that the areas they're talking about grass appear to be, the one you got on the screen looks like it's, compared to some dimensions elsewhere, it's at least 12 foot wide.
Yeah. There are a few that are a little narrower, but there's several that are plenty wide to accommodate it, I think.
While we're on this map,
That's another one that's pretty wide.
let me digress just a minute. The folks here that were just on the last action item on the agenda, could you show us where have you got a slide that shows where Trade Street pulls off?
This doesn't go that far. Does it stop at Percy Drive?
No, it goes further north.
And Ron.
Basically right where the barber shop used to be, or still is.
North of,
That one. Small Pine.
yep. This may be it, one to your right.
Right there. Is that it? Nope.
You're right there.
Yeah, that's
It does say
Oh,
Trade
it says
Drive.
Trade, yeah.
So it's not affecting access there. I thought y'all would be interested in seeing it, that if you could just show got a pointer or anything that would,
Yeah, they're down, their properties are down in here. It's not letting me use the pointer on this PDF.
okay. So what will happen there at the entrance, there'll be some new curb and gutter installed that will, but that's, and some storm drainage, temporary construction, but overall it'll improve what you got.
But their patrons are gonna have to go down and make a U-turn versus now they can make a left.
Right.
But when this is finished, they'll have to go down to the nearest
They could actually,
turnaround.
if you can get out, you could actually make it right here for U-turn. If not, you would have to go down to the next one. That's not much further.
Not bad compared to what they're doing. So do we need to recommend that we proceed with this discussion to staff to be able to hearing what we've had, what they had to say, to negotiate with DOT a combination of areas, those of appropriate width to be grassed, those that are too narrow to be concrete? That's as far as we get into the quote-unquote weeds.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Mr. Manager, you have a report?
You have your Garner info, and then you also have a building report inside your packet. If there's any questions, the only other thing I wanted to report was the town players, teens, and summer theater campers are putting on production of Honk Jr. starting Thursday and running through Saturday. And the shows are going to be at the GPAC each night at 8, with the additional matinee showing on 2 p.m. on Saturday. So this is part of their theater camp, and trying to teach the next generation all about acting and the theater arts at our Garner Performing Arts Center.
I would just,
Our own Rick Mercer's daughter is going to be in it?
yep. Yeah, I would just second what he's saying. You'll miss a treat if you don't go, at least all the ones I've been to in the past years. Some talented kids, and they do a good job working with them, so
Honk Jr.
encourage you to get a ticket and go see it.
And that's all I have.
Mr. Attorney?
Yes, sir.
Councilman, let's start with Mr. Vance.
I have nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Marshburn?
Thanks, sir. A couple of things. I have a citizen who apparently is a very early riser, but he was concerned this past week that when he went to the parks, Lake Benson in particular, or maybe White Deer, that the gates were not opened at 6:30 in the morning, which is the time he understood they ordinarily would be, and he expressed some concern about the number of cars that park all around the entrance and the grass and stuff. He assumed that maybe whoever usually does that maybe was on leave this past week, but at any rate, I assured him I would mention that, and maybe somebody who customarily attends to that could look into whether or not that's just a temporary issue or if it's an ongoing concern, the opening of the gates here at the park. Okay.
Yeah, we can follow up on that.
Okay. And I would say, and I'm sure it's going to happen between now and the 7th, but when I went over to what will soon be Jackie John's Community Park, I was a little bothered by the fact that, the grass just seemed to have not been mowed in a while. If you had kids playing out there, you wouldn't want that. But at any rate, and even some of the playground equipment looks like it could use some attention, maybe some refurbishing. So I hope we can look at cleaning that up some or getting it in better shape than it is now. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I think, as to how to approach this, but at any rate, I think we would be remiss as a council if we didn't take a few minutes to think about citizens in two of our towns across the United States. One is El Paso, Texas, and the other is Dayton, Ohio. The tragic events occurred there. I've had the privilege of spending a night in El Paso, Texas. Seemed like a very nice and a friendly town, and I think any time you've been to those places, your heart goes out to those people. Reminded of a quote from Thomas Paine that says, "These are the times that try men's souls." And certainly I think that is true. And I would just say that it seems to me that leaders at all levels of government, including local, state, and federal, ought to be able to work together in some form or fashion to address these concerns and do more than prayer and platitudes, even though those are important. And certainly as one of the town leaders here, I would and nobody seems to have a solution, but if we can send a man to the moon and back, we can certainly do a better job of protecting our citizens than what we're doing right now. It's a tragedy that's it's a tragedy. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Great.
There's two items. One, I would like to mention, since Mr. Mercer's here, now that the council has approved the renaming of the Rand Mill Road Park to Jackie John's Community Park. Maybe you can get that out on our social media formats. Maybe you send it to some of the local paper or something to get printed. I actually had a resident who had asked me about this before, called me today about two items, that being one of them. He said, "Is there anything happening on naming something after Mr. Johns?" And I said, unless I'm surprised, that's going to take place tonight. So I think if people knew about it, they would probably be very appreciative of that. So if you could push that out on the platforms that you usually do, I'd appreciate it. Also, I want to mention, I meant to mention this last week, but I forgot till after I got in the car, that the underground utilities around Town Hall, the work that was done, looks good. Town Hall looks, putting the utilities underground, you don't think it makes a difference with that. The new lights, you got the turf out, the sprinkler system, it looks the grass is getting there. It does take some time, but the underground utilities looks nice. Makes the whole campus and everything around it look completely different. And so I appreciate the work that was done with that. And I think it looks good. I don't know if it's complete, if all that's completed or not, but it looks good. So it is complete. Okay. And I noticed they put some more turf. I know the turf, they put some of this in, I reckon, at the end of last week or today, because some of that turf was still bare. I reckon they were waiting for the whatever.
Yeah, I think most of the turf is in. They do have some more mulching and some other things to do, and they're also going to tidy up, do some power washing and cleaning up. So I would not consider it to be final, but it is getting close.
Okay, that's good. And I'll mention one other thing. We talked about last week or 2 meetings ago, We're doing some restriping on, for traffic calming measures on Lakeside. It's interesting, it's here at Town Hall, not to be ugly, but I've noticed at both high schools that whatever they're putting, whatever kind of striping paint they put in parking lots is pitiful. I mean, it's pitiful. I mean, some of the Town Hall lines are already faded. We've been here 2 years. The crosswalks faded back. Go to both Garner High School and South Garner. At South Garner, you can't read the numbers in half the spaces. It's horrible. I don't know if there's anything we can change, but whoever's putting it, whether it's our contractor, their contractors, whoever, it's pitiful. I mean, the paint's gone. You can't even see the lines. Taking my daughter there to go practice drive for her driver's ed. What number you want me to turn in? We couldn't even see the numbers. I mean, it's horrible. And that high school's been at me one season, and the new high school, and it's just, a lot of those lines are gone.
Somebody can take care of it.
Well, what it is cheap. Now, ours included. I mean, it's just cheap. But just putting paint on. I went to the hardware store and got some striping paint on one of them machines I used to sell the town years ago at Hudson's, stripe the fields with, and that's what they did it with. I swear that's what it looks like. And that's not only, I'm not going to pick on just government, the town and the county and the schools. A business who opened here a couple of years ago, a Fortune 500 company, their parking lot looks horrible too. I kid you not. And I notice this stuff all the time now, but it's amazing that, anyway, people looking at you for everything to cut costs. You want your property and your projects to look good for a long time. Anyway, the underground utilities, the grass, all that looks good. Just a thumbs up. It does finish off Town Hall, and I've had numerous people make numerous comments about it, so I just want to pass them on.
Buck, do you have anything?
One or two or five,
Let me first
six.
congratulate you on winning the Stevens Award.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I don't think I have but one that leans towards the negative side. But when we, when the grass...
1 out of 5, that's only 20%. It's low tonight.
No, I got 9 of them. But it's a good night. Not even, well, it's got past 10 o'clock, I reckon. Retention pond at the corner of Montague and 70. On the street work, I'm assuming we must have, our own public works must have eventually cut the grass. Is that right? Who's responsible for cutting the grass inside the fence and has, around the pond? Has that been done? Have I missed it?
It's been done. The contractor's responsible for that. It's been done.
Appreciate that. All right, so, hey, that's a positive. So we turned the negative into positive. Let's go to the second one. Has there any progress been made on the, regarding a Parks and Recreation consultant for the Jurgen property? Are we anywhere along the line on getting that master planning done?
Yes, we've had some conversations with the park staff and McAdams to try to figure out the proposal, and we think we've got that to a point that is appropriate, and it needs to come back to you for a funding source, and that is in the works.
All righty. Let me
I'm free.
Moving along. At an appropriate time, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but outline a schedule regarding a time that council will get together on the CIP or the council retreat or any other things that are planned or that resemble a retreat towards that would normally be scheduled in November. If you got anything to report now, but I'm thinking that's still a work in progress.
Yes, we'll have discussions about it as a staff and look at all the various topics we have and come up with a game plan and some suggested date timeline for that.
Ray was reading my notes on the town campus. I'll endorse what Gray said. It looks very nice now. It's you got to be proud of it. The Thompson Road Park, if you haven't been down there recently, and it's kind of out of the way, but since we live close by, we just happened to drive through there the other day, and that park looks as good as it's looked in years. The fencing that helped protect kept errant drivers from driving out onto the field, and the resodding and reseeding that was done 2 or 3 years, a couple of years ago at least. All of that is really paying off with the diligence of the public works staff, and I'm assuming it's public works with that in combination with parks. But the grass really looked good just in time for Pop Warner to start playing football, but which was fine. It was a good place for him to practice, and I can hear him from the house. But it does. My compliments to the staff on getting that done. There was an announcement we got about the business park that is being considered. John, tell us a little bit about that, if you know more of the details. That it's out on 70 where we're installing a sewer line to serve that.
Yes, sir. I think Mr. Stallings sent out an announcement to council about the fact that business park was moving along. It gives Joe more product, as he would call it in the economic development terms, to be able to market for our community. I don't have the statistics in front of me of all the square footage of what's there, but it's a national developer. It's one of the first times they've developed in the Triangle area. They're excited to be here. I mentioned at dinner tonight, is actually, the story was picked up in the Triangle Business Journal, so if you haven't seen that article, it's a very nice article about it in the Triangle Business Journal. And as Mr. Kennedy alluded to with the sewer extension, this is one of the rare occasions that Garner has taken on an extension of the sewer system since we merged with Raleigh, and it was a very strategic extension that was made utilizing funds that had been in reserve just for that purpose, the extension of our system. And by investing it, the investment made in the sewer line is going to pay the town back many times over in terms of tax base that is being added there.
I think
estimated value is $50 million and will add up to 675,000 square feet of industrial flex space.
Very good.
That's a lot. And I think Chris mentioned earlier tonight that tell about the progress on the sewer line.
Yes, the completion date for that, I believe, is in mid-October, and we had our first monthly progress meeting today, and they are running ahead of schedule. So it's our hope, as long as the weather doesn't turn sour or they run into any unforeseen circumstances, that they should hopefully be done ahead of that date. They've encountered a little bit of rock in one area, but other than that, everything has ran pretty smoothly.
Well, one of the reasons of bringing that up is to take our hats off to Joe pushing us ahead and giving us a vision of what could be done, and working with and bringing developers to the table, and getting our approval to invest in the sewer line. It's one of those occasions where it all worked out. Looks like it'll work out for Garner's benefit. Since our last meeting, I had a chance to talk with Chris about some minor revisions in the engineering contract templates, and I think that'll be coming up on the next agenda. Thank you for your efforts on that, Chris. That's it's been a long time coming, but with your experience in this, it's made it come to the forefront, and I thank you very much on that. Now, this next one is due to my wife, but for the folks that are still watching, get your hands on one of these Discover, Play, and Celebrate. It's a booklet and programming booklet put out by Parks and Recreation and Cultural Resources, and it gives you an inside look on the programs that are available by the town. It first of all, it looks good. It's well arranged, organized, and when you finish looking at it and just the way it's put together, it speaks well of the town. Last thing, I think I'm there, is that if you ran down to page 122 on the building report, I want you to just run down there just a second. 122 on the 121 on the hard copy and 122 on our computer, on our tablet. Anyhow, looking under new buildings for this past month or since the last report, there's 34 single-family dwellings have drawn permits and 11 townhomes. And that's just, when you scroll on down and look at the total investment, the in-town value of all of the different permitting processes, that's over 11 million for 1 month, and that's a pretty healthy sum. So things are moving right along, and that is all I have. And I can add number 9 or number 10 and move to adjourn.
Well, before we adjourn, can I say one quick thing?
Yes, sir.
Real quick.
You mentioned Mr. Kennedy being the recipient of the Stevens Award, and the news release, and I'm assuming Mr. Mercer put together, I have my favorite new word describing Mr. Kennedy, his hawkishness. I called Buck up and said, I got a favorite new word, can I new nickname, instead of calling you Buck, can I call you Hawk? His hawkishness, that was great. I couldn't resist.
Let's go and name him after the, who is it, the MASH guy, Hawkeye.
Hawkeye, that's right, with a hawk, he can fly.
This fellow that came, was somebody speaking down there?
No, sir.
He must have gone on for 20 minutes. Some of his speech was good, some of it wasn't. But when he wants to compare us to a church or business in Cary, I don't think it's fair. Part of the reason it's like it is because of income. Income.
Yep.
He doesn't factor that in.
Different part of the triangle.
But they build
area.
houses they know they can sell.
Correct. I'll second Mr. Kennedy's motion about adjourning. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.